Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the resumption of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 6 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 6 of 13 as our drivers get back underway after an absolutely splendid Christmas break, there's no doubt about it, but now there'll be no more mid-season breaks and it is the long haul all the way to the conclusion of the season, and we bring things back together today in the United Kingdom at the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. And what better circuit to resume on, of course, a British circuit absolutely stapled with history and multiple motorsport disciplines. Of course, perhaps most infamously remembered for the antics of Ayrton Senna in the rain, where he took that absolutely superb win with an opening lap that could only be dreamed of in those conditions, but bringing it a little bit closer to home with touring car racing. This circuit being a regular feature on the TCR UK and the British Touring Car Championship calendars, and well, one major moment of history in the British Touring Car Championship, of course, back in the Super Touring era in 1999. Many of you who are a fan will remember it was the day of the independent Matt Neal who took the first ever independent win in the Super Touring era and in the modern era of the series, and walked away from the circuit with a net prize of £250,000, because that was what was on offer for anybody as an independent who could bring home the win. Now, whilst we don't have £250,000 up for grabs for our drivers today, if they do take home a win, there are plenty of points up for grabs for our drivers in order to keep their championship campaign well on track to the best possible result. And we've got 3 races today, what this being a sprint round, and let's take you through that schedule for today. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time, UTC. We'll be getting underway with our qualifying session in just under 14 minutes time. That'll be at 7:45 this evening. 15 minutes of qualifying where all of our drivers will take to the circuit and look to try and achieve their best possible lap time with the time available, but with overtaking being quite possible here, it means that qualifying does not have as much pressure put onto it as it would normally would, particularly compared to our last round at the Hungaroring. And then we'll be going straight into our first race of 3. That'll be the first sprint heat of the day at 8 o'clock, 15 minutes in length. And of course, with all of these sprint races, there'll be no pit stops. It's no hold bars action from the start to the finish. The aim of the game is to get to the front of the field and hold on to lead and bring home the maximum possible points, and we'll have our first sprint for 15 minutes at 8 o'clock. After that, we'll take a brief breather before returning for the grid at approximately at 20 past 8 and going racing once again for sprint heat number 2, another 15-minute race, and then we'll take another breather before returning to the grid at 8:45 for the final race of the day, and that'll be sprint feature. The 30-minute race, double the time duration, no pit stop still, but tyre wear does become a more significant issue, and indeed balancing the car and stamina all packed in together, and that's what makes it the ultimate challenge. Now, of course, we should point out this broadcast is being brought to you live, but the racing action you are seeing is a post-round broadcast racing action, whereby the racing actually occurred as of earlier this week, back on a Monday, the 2nd of January 2023, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live for your viewing pleasure, and I, as your host and commentator, do not know what happens, whether it's in the final practice session, which is ongoing in the background right now, or alternatively in qualifying or the races. It is all new to me, and we do ask if you are a driver who participated in the races, do not give away any spoilers in the chat for the guys and girls tuning in at home, as they will not want it spoiled for them. But in terms of where you can tune in, of course, you can tune in via 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, via Twitch, you can go to twitch.tv/TX1for1. Alternatively, if you're more YouTube inclined, you could go to youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh or TX1for1TX. And who is Paul Walsh? Well, that is I. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul TX1for1 Walsh, also known as Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will bring you all your racing action tonight, and indeed over the remainder of the season, which continues to ask the ultimate question for Season 6, who is the #1 driver in the touring car in both the Alpha and the Delta classes. But as we say hello to you guys and girls in the chat, and we can see some of you there already, including Logan McKinsey in the YouTube chat, do not be shy, feel free to say hi, whether you're on YouTube, alternatively on Twitch. We don't discriminate, and everybody is welcome here in the ATC, there's no question about it. But in terms of questions, let's take a look at our calendar then and see what's still outstanding and what is to come and what has stayed before us. Well, as we look back through the calendar then with our 13 rounds on the schedule, last time out on the 19th of December in 2022, we saw the rise of James Carr in the Hungaroring circuit in Hungary, and really it was the hurrah of Carr in Hungary, whereby he was absolutely infallible and took the championship lead overall and in the Alpha class, and in the Delta class, meanwhile, it was the debut of none other than Jacob Whaley, who took the major prizes and points, winning in the Delta class on his debut, and really putting a huge marker down versus championship leader Justin Rhodes, who had a dismal day, and Eric Stats Max, who managed to close the gap to his championship leader rival, but not by much, and indeed the two are quite a distance apart. But with the Hungaroring in round number 5 in our Alpha round, where it was the single feature race. Before that, back on the 12th of December, we were in Japan at Suzuka for another sprint round, and there in the second sprint round of the season, it was no hold barred action over the course of all 3 races. Indeed, the rise of Wojciech versus what was Hendricks, and the battle all the way through the rounds, and indeed it was very tense. But before that, we of course had a mid-season break, and before the mid-season break, the first of them, we were in Japan still for the Fuji Speedway back in round number 3 on the 21st of November, and there it was an Alpha round, the second feature race round of the season, and at the Fuji International Speedway, we saw sparks fly, slipstream aplenty as our drivers battled down the colossal start-finish straight. In round number 2, preceding that, it was the first sprint race round of the season, and of course we kick off the sprint races with none other than the Monterey County Circuit in the United States of America of Laguna Seca, and we opened up at the classic AlphaTouring Challenge opening circuit. It was of course the Detroit Circuit of Belle Isle in the United States back on the 7th of November, and indeed that's where we started the journey, and where we are now on the 2nd of January of round number 6, we've still got plenty to go as we transition across the midway point of the season that's coming up. For next time, it will be an Alpha round on the 9th of January at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, and following that we'll then be making our way over to Germany, continuing the tour of the European continent for a brief while. On the 16th of January, it will be the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit for another 3 sprint races, before we then make our way to the South American continent on the 23rd of January for the Interlagos circuit in round number 9, and the Brazilian circuit, of course, being one of those circuits that always traditionally comes towards the end of a motorsporting calendar due to its nature to create fantastic racing action, but also major drama in a championship. And could we see some championship drama there and then? We'll have to wait and see with regards to that. But after we leave Brazil, we'll make our way back towards Europe and over to the Scandinavian region, and we head to the Norwegian circuit over at Skogen Motor Centre on the 30th of January. And there at a circuit which is very tight and tricky, it's going to be all about qualifying and being able to be brave on the brakes if you want to make a move in the race, for the simple reason the Norwegian countryside and the Norwegian forestry around means that the circuit is very tricky to overtake at, and it is all about the one-lap pace. And then round number 11, we'll make our way back to the United States of America for a double run at Mid-Ohio firstly on the 6th of February in an Alpha round, and then another Alpha round to follow on up, and that will be at Road Atlanta in the penultimate round of the season, the roller coaster ride in the state of Georgia on the 13th of February, and then we'll make our way down under to Australia for the special round number 13, and that'll be on the 20th of February at the Bathurst circuit, but we also know it as Mount Panorama Raceway, and there of course the mountain takes no prisoners whatsoever, so still a very daunting schedule ahead for our drivers, and they have got Donington Park to contend with today. And as we talk about Donington Park, then this circuit located in Leicestershire in England of the United Kingdom is a circuit, as you can see from the map provided by simracingwiki.com. Thank you to them as always for their brilliant track maps. This circuit, consisting of 12 corners, is not done justice on a 2-dimensional diagram, for the simple reason this circuit is characterised, as you can see from the diagram, for its sweeping corners. A lot of medium speed corners dominate the first half of this circuit. In the run out of turn number 1 at Redgate Corner, down through the Craner curves of 2 and 3 and into the old hairpin at turn number 4, all medium speed sweepers. It's flat out through Starkey's Bridge and through the kink of 6 into the braking zone of McLean's at turn number 7, and also it's a third to second gear corner at Coppice at turn number 8. We've all run down the back straight into the S's chicane, which will be fast and hard, and our drivers will need to try and carry as much speed as possible between turns 9 and 10. But then we'll go into 2 final slow corners where we deviate away from the national circuit and onto the Grand Prix layout, while drivers will make their way into the Melbourne hairpin at turn number 11, the slowest corner on the circuit, and then they'll come into Goddard's hard and fast and onto the anchors for the final corner before they go around and do it all again over the 12 corners. But we talked about all the corners, we talked about the medium speed sweepers, but what does this circuit map not do for us then? Well, it doesn't show you how blind the apexes are around here. In particular, Redgate at turn number 1, the old hairpin at turn number 4, McLean's at turn 7, and Coppice Corner, well, you're going to see it very shortly, is an uphill braking zone into a corner you cannot see until you've cleared the hill. But the thing about it is, you have to brake before the crest or the ridge, if you will, because otherwise you'll go on deep and go out onto the gravel. And also, did we forget to say, this circuit is absolutely ram-packed with undulations. Indeed, the elevation changes from corner to corner, minus the run from turn 8 to turn 11, and also the final corner at turn number 12. The undulations which dominate the first 8 corners of this circuit have to be seen to be believed, and we'll be showing you them very shortly in qualifying. But as for our rules for today, let's give you a quick reminder of those. In terms of setup, the car fuel loads have been restricted to 45% for this round. In terms of the sprint races, no pit stops are expected in any of the 3 races. The grid for race number 2 shall be a top 4 reverse of race 1's results. To put that in layman's terms, whoever wins race number 1, they'll be starting P4 in the grid for race number 2. Whoever finishes 4th, meanwhile, starts on pole, and if you finish 5th or lower, you'll be starting there for race number 2. And in race number 3, we'll see a top 8 reverse of race 2's results. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 9 or more instant points, and they shall be disqualified from a given race if they accumulate 13 instant points. I mean, they need to stay out of trouble and stay clear of incidents or making contact with other drivers where possible. And the following bonus points are available as is per the tradition. 1 point for overall pole position in qualifying, 1 point for the fastest lap over all of the races, so whoever has set the fastest lap at the end of the 3 races shall get that bonus point. 1 point for the Sublime Finesse Award, which is the fewest instance over the round. 1 point for leading a lap in a given race. It can be in any one of the 3 races. If a driver leads a lap, they'll get a bonus point. And 1 point for the Naked Aggression Award, which is the most overtakes over the entirety of the round. Well, that's all the rules and regulation. I know what you're all here for, and you don't want to wait any longer, and we neither do. Well, we're going to be heading back to our live cameras here and seeing our drivers getting themselves set right now as we do look to Robert Abrams heading on down into the old hairpin. As the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver makes the way on through the right-hander and starting to head back up the hill again, up towards what will be a Starkey's and then to McLean's. He's gone through Starkey's already, in fact, and into McLean's corner. 19 drivers in attendance today, and as he comes running through the right-hander, we do have to say a Happy New Year to you all, of course, with it being at 2023, and we, of course, last time when we broadcasted it was 2022, and it's looking up bright in the world of Alpha Touring Change, there's no doubt about it. An all-new year and an all-new year of sim racing in the touring car racing class for our drivers, but we're just under 4 minutes to go before we head into qualifying. We do also look to the chat once again and say hello to Shink F there. That's Francois Shink in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Francois. And also there to Lab Mob. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lab Mob, that you may be Mr. Achatella himself. Icona Achatella, but I could be wrong on that one. But speaking of Mr. Achatella, here he is. He makes his way on down, albeit with some connectivity issues there for the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver, it would seem. But in the 55 Veloster flying on around there, but phasing in and out of existence, unfortunately. And as he heads on up, hopefully those connectivity issues will not prove too horrendous as time wears on into the racing. But as we also look to Jerome Bajou, lads, for Beaver Buzz Energy there, making his way out of turn number 11 through Melbourne and up towards Goddard's he goes. We can see all our drivers right now just getting themselves finalised and set. And of course, when we do have about 30 seconds to go on this practice session, we will be cutting away and just having a brief hold screen for the simple reason we will need to advance forward to qualifying, and we'll need to make sure that the qualifying times are not revealed in the qualifying session. Of course, that has been a technical issue in the past, so we do have a workaround for that. But in terms of what can we expect here in qualifying, well, we would argue that given the number of Hyundais here today, particularly the Elantras and to a lesser extent the Velosters, it is going to be Elantra County. And we can see here we do have some newcomers as well. 1 Alpha newcomer and 2 newcomers in the Delta class. And well, let's start with our Alpha driver here. He may be a rookie to the series, but I can tell you one thing, he is not a rookie in the touring car racing class. It is none other than the privateer, the Canadian of Jason Landry in the number 5 car. And well, his name echoes to the halls of TCR Racing, of course, a major star in the official iRacing series and also in a number of major series outside the official iRacing series. And he has graced the Alpha Touring Challenge here today at Donington Park. And well, if you're looking for one driver who I think is going to be setting the time screens alight, he could be the man to do it. Can he steal everybody's thunder? However, that will be the big question. An absolute flyer. But as well as him, we've also got the 2 newcomers of what is Samuel Coran and also Mark Senegal, albeit they're both in the pit lane at the moment and not available. So we won't be able to cut to them in the Delta class, but we will make sure to introduce them when we do head into qualifying as they take to the circuit. But in terms of the car, which is expected to be the strongest here over the course of the racing, well, it's not any of the Hyundais. In fact, it is the Honda Civic Type R, which has the ideal characteristics for the Donington Park circuit. Strong on the brakes, great in the low gear to medium gear accelerations, the second through to fourth, and also naturally very strong on tyre conservation when pushed hard. The only downside of the Honda, of course, it takes a multitude of laps to get its tyres up to temperature, approximately 4 laps before it's in that optimum window. So we should see the likes of Matt Shepker and other drivers in the Honda, also Eric Stats, only 2 Hondas here today, in fact, really come alive as the race goes on and in qualifying as we get towards the end of the 15-minute session. But we'll have to wait to see if that's the way it plays out. Of course, the Hyundai Elantra considered to be the car that's the number 1 in terms of 1-lap pace, but in return, let's not count out as well the other cars here today, including the Audi RS3 and also the Hyundai Veloster. But we'll talk a little bit more about them very shortly as we do see see the Lego machine there from Hassel's Motorsports of Mika Hendricks making the way up towards the right-hander of turn number 8. And as he comes on through, will roll his way through the corner there and looking all set to go. Indeed, Overdrive's absolutely itching, but it is Landry who has topped the timing tower for the purposes of this final practice session by 2/10 over Hendricks. And then we can see that Jerome Bagillo is normally right up there, a bit further down in P10 behind Justin Rhodes as they make the way on down towards the S's, the chicane of turns 9 and 10, getting ready to go on to the brakes, but he'll be absolutely set now. But with the practice session complete, it is time for us to cut away briefly, ladies and gentlemen, and move into qualifying. We'll be right back. We do apologise for the delay, ladies and gentlemen, but we are back there after a slight technical hitch as we had a little bit of difficulty in making sure to hide those times in qualifying. But we are here now with all our drivers making their way out onto circuit for the 15-minute qualifying session. And well, Jason Landry leads the field out of the pit lane through turn of 1 already. And I wonder here whether the privateer has already got his eye in on the circuit and looking to go for pole straight away as he makes his way on down the hill and in towards the old hairpin. Of course, as he makes his way on around here, whilst there are 15 minutes available, there's not a huge amount of time given the amount of space that our drivers will need to set their optimum lap. And the question could be, of course, will our drivers be looking to try and find a bit of toe over the course of the lap? Well, you'd imagine yes they will, given the fact we do have some rather extended straightaways, particularly the run out of turn at number 8, in the run down towards the S's, and also the run all the way to the hairpins of what is Melbourne, and also Gollard's turns 11 and 12. But as they make the way on through then onto the start finish straight, the switch train is going to be important in the second half of the lap, but the opening half you really do not want that dirty air over the front of your car, or too heavy over the front of the car, because the extra understeer could really cause your car to want to go overly deep into the corner. And when the aim of the game on the opening 8 corners of this circuit is to carry as much speed as possible from apex to apex and really sweep your way on through, understeer is not something you want to have to deal with by the dozen. But speaking of cars making the way on around it, we do look to Wojciech Swierdowicz making his way out to turn at number 11 and up towards turn number 12. as he heads up towards the braking zone for the final corner, getting ready to go onto his opening lap of this qualifying session behind Landry. Ran the Audi RS3, and the Audi here, the sole Audi driver, is definitely going to be an interesting car around here. For the simple reason, it's not going to be able to play too heavily to its core strength, which is straight line speed. We got drivers only getting up to 5th gear, 6th gear by exception perhaps if you're in the Audi with its very high gear ratio in terms of the optimization towards those higher gears. But the offset of the Audi is that this car is very strong over curves. It's a heavy car, and indeed all these cars are heavy, but it feels heavy over the curves, why it's not really unsettled by the curbing, and therefore we can expect for Swierdorich to abuse those curves a little bit more compared to his peers, and that may just give him the opportunity to cut those curves a bit aggressively and therefore gain some lap time. But of course, if he cuts them too hard, they may just end up picking up a penalty or an invalidated lap if it's in qualifying, which he currently is in, of course. Now, the other car which is available is the Hyundai Veloster, and as we see John Lauzon here making his way around in the blue Beaver Buzz Energy machine, the Veloster being the jack of all trades car, the master of none, we will expect it to go quite well here. It should theoretically, much like the Honda, go very well in the race. In qualifying, perhaps be a little bit down compared to the pace we'd expect from the Elantras and also the Audi RS3, but never say never, the Veloster can fly, and what has been an open setup series as well, it does come down to the driver choosing the car that suits them first and foremost, and then making those tweaks to the setup in order to get the most out of the car. And as we see Lauzon making his way on down the back straight here in towards the S's, getting himself all set. I can see some comments there in the YouTube chat with regards to Hendricks having switched to what is there, the Elantra, going into the Lego Mobile, but still racing for Haas-Holzer Motorsport. But of course you'll remember last time we saw him take to the circuit at the Hungaroring, racing in the Hyundai Veloster, but switching it to the Elantra of old. And I think the sign that the car switch was the optimum choice for him as he makes his way through the final corner and comes to the line to the end of his first flying lap. We'll ride on board shortly with some of our drivers for qualifying laps. We're just giving them an opportunity to get their tyres up to temperature, because these touring cars do need at least 2 laps, the out lap and a fast lap, before they start to get into the zone. Or in the Honda, you need a couple more laps than that. The Audi, you're already there, and the Elantra and the Veloster somewhere in between. But it does look as though the opening provisional pole does go to Jason Landry here for 37.064, albeit plenty of time to go, but the margin of 2.5 tenths between himself and then the next closest driver, Swierdorich, there, you would imagine that he does feel as though he's got a bit of an advantage in his pocket. But to be fair, knowing Landry, he's not going to take anything for granted. Meanwhile, in the Delta class, well, here is Kurt Smith. He's currently your provisional pole sitter by a margin of what is a 10th over Justin Rhodes. Now, Kurt Smith, of course, rising in the championship standings after his great performance at the Hungaroring, moving up into P3 in the Delta class, albeit we should point out all the points are distributed on an overall basis, so our Deltas and Alphas are all battling within the same championship standings, and therefore our Deltas are encouraged to battle the Alphas in order to try and keep their points as they go through the race. It's understandable, of course. The higher you place on the grid overall, the more points you're going to get, and the higher likelihood is you'll finish well within your respective class, and that's what it's all about for the likes of Kurt Smith, Justin Rhodes, Eric Statzer and company. They all want to try and get as many points and really deliver with regards to their performances, and you never know, they may end up getting promoted into the Alpha class if they make that much of an impression come the end of the season. But as we do see Smith making his way on down, we do look to the driver who stole all the headlines in the Delta class, of course, last time out the Hungaroring. It is Wally here as he makes his way up towards turn at number 12, and as he makes way into the braking zone here in the Hyundai Veloster, the Hyundai Elantra, we should say. We're going to ride on board with him as he takes us around for a flying lap on the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. Bring the dashboard up in the bottom right corner, of course, he can track his speed and gear, and into turn of 1 at Redgate corner, braking just at the end of the pit lane exit and coming all the way down the gearbox to the second gear. An apex speed there of approximately 65 miles an hour as he powers out and now heads all the way down towards the old hairpin. But to get there, he has to go via the crane that curves through to the right-hand king, and now you can see no apex visible, and then suddenly the turn 3 apex appears out of nowhere, and onto the brakes he goes there, approximately 75 metres from the corner apex down to third gear, understeers a little bit there and has to hesitate and get the power on as he makes his way under Starkey's Bridge and in towards the kink of 6. But as he makes his way into turn number 6, notice how as he comes through, he immediately has to straighten the steering wheel and brake for turn number 7 as he heads into McLean's down to third gear, drifts the car using the rear brake bias, and now into Coppice corner. Where's the corner, I hear you ask? Well, he's got to brake for it. He brakes for it about 75 metres, and there suddenly the apex is. He clears the ridge line, third gear, and now powering out as he makes his way down the back straight. And that's the first 8 corners, and you can see the undulations and the sweepers all aplenty as he now makes it into the braking zone for the S's. Braking at the 50-metre board there and coming down the gearbox to third gear, straight line between the 2 apex at 79 miles an hour. And as he makes his way up towards Melbourne, now we're heading towards 2 traditional hairpin style corners, albeit Melbourne very wide and open here, braking about 100 metres from corner apex, goes down to first gear, decides to go a little bit deep to get the cutback line. We'll go for a very tight exit apex, and as he powers out up towards the final corner of Gollard's here, now a downhill braking zone, a very gentle downhill braking zone, and then suddenly the road falls away as he brakes 80 metres from corner apex down to first gear, powers out and makes his way to the timeline. A smooth lap from Wally, but what's it going to be as he crosses the line? His previous best has been pipped by himself, and that is a 37.997. He sets there 1.3 tenths off of the pole lap overall, but moves himself into provisional pole in the Delta class, and a beautiful lap to go with it as we now look further afield. And nice lap there from Wally, but immediately Rhodes responds by going provisional pole in the Delta's P7 overall with a 37.67, and that is a very fast lap for the Brits. For the Dinner driver, really now trying to make his mark and make sure that his thunder is not going to be stolen, of course, for that difficult day at the Hungaroring, where the pace just was not in the car. And as he makes his way down into the old hairpin, goes a bit deep there. And the thing about the old hairpin, the challenge of that corner is you want to, as a driver, go as deep as possible into that braking zone, because you think to yourself, I'm going to make the apex, I want to carry as much speed. And then when you brake as close as possible to the corner, you just naturally go a bit too deep on the brakes, and therefore the car creeps away from you. And the thing about these touring car racing class cars is they're front engine, front wheel drive. So engine in the front tyres got to do all the hard work, which is the handling, the cornering, but also the power deployment. And you really do need to be smart in terms of where you brake for that old hairpin, because going in too deep means you're naturally just going to cause the car to understeer. And with these cars very prone to understeer by default, that's something you do not want to have to deal with, because it takes life out of the tyre, and also it takes a huge amount of time out of your lap when you're in qualifying mode. But as we do see Rhodes making his way down towards Melbourne once again, we look to some drivers who are perhaps not on the pace right now, including Jerome Pajulas, who currently 7.1 seconds off of the fastest time in the session, which has just been improved by Jason Landry to a 36. Well, I was going to finish that sentence there, but Hendricks has completely cut across. Mika Hendricks has gone provisional pole. As we see here, the Elantra driver making the way through turn number 1 with a 36.288, now 2.5 tenths faster than Jason Landry. Well, I can tell you one thing, as he makes his way on down the hill here, he's not definitely bricking it in the car. I think everybody else in the field may be bricking it by comparison, as the Lego machine is absolutely flying high. But of course, there's still plenty of time in this qualifying session as he makes his way on through. And well, speaking of drivers making the way on through, Logan McKenzie here in the Yellow Flag Motorsport Elantra heading on through. And Logan McKenzie, of course, having a good day at the Hungaroring. Yellow Flag Motorsport really having a stronger run of form compared to their previous rounds, and now as they go into the new year, we're expecting them to continue that momentum, albeit Achetella by comparison a bit further down the order, all the way back in P16. But meanwhile, we can see here McKenzie coming on through the right hander at turn number 8 right now, making his way through Coppice, and in the draft there of what is Wally as he makes his way on down. And we do have quite a bit of traffic ahead of the pair now. That's Shepka and also one other driver just in front of him we didn't quite catch, but as they head into the braking zone, does look as though we had a brief glitch with regards to our timing there, ladies and gentlemen, but hopefully that will be resolved very shortly, as it does look as though just our timing tower decided to refresh itself a couple of times. But as we had a driver off there, and I believe that was Wally heading off, and also on top of that, I believe that McKenzie having to back off slightly in order to stay clear of the situation. We do look to McKenzie heading into the braking zone here for what is Melbourne, as for some reason our timing tower does seem to want to continuously keep refreshing itself, and I do apologise for that. I'm not exactly sure why it's deciding to act up the way it is, but it is right now. But still, as our drivers continue to make their way on around, it is Hendricks who has got the time to beat, as we then do look to some of the Delta drivers a bit further down the field, including P2 in the Delta class right now, and that is Eric Statzer as he makes his way into the final corner, goes a bit deep there into the corner and brings himself on around. And I think that might have just been a temporary mistake from the Delta driver and getting himself on set, and in fact by going deep he sets himself up with a better run to the opening corner, a bit more straight line speed, and maybe that's why he's decided to do it, just to give himself that run as he comes out of the corner. And we do just deploy a very quick fix there to our timing tower, so hopefully those issues shall not occur once again. Apologies for that. But as we see Statzer making his way down the hill, we'll see the Honda fly all the way through, making his way in towards the old hairpin now, and the privateer here drifting his way on. And you'll notice there how the car lifting up on the rear right wheel as he makes his way into the braking zone for the old hairpin. That's how much momentum they carry in the downhill run. But as he now makes his way uphill, he does have a little bit of traffic in front of him. That traffic is not going to aid him whatsoever, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is one of the breakfast for dinner cars which moves out the way immediately, and I think that is James Carr who's decided to steer clear. So as a result, Statzer Statson now having all the run he needs on the remainder of this lap, as we're in that Jason Landry is going even faster, heading towards the timeline. Right now he's crossed the timeline. He improves to 36.371, but stays P2. Spiridoric does the same, improves to 36.641, but stays P3. But as we do see Statson making his way through the S's and down towards Melbourne, he is absolutely pushing it hard right now, but can he improve enough to get himself inside the overall top 10, which would put him on a more equal footing with Justin Rhodes, of course, and with Wally not too far outside the top 10 either, as John Lawson jumps up to P9 from P10 at 37.532. There we see on the timing tower, everybody is improving. The rubber is going down the circuit. Track temperature's coming on up, but Stats are going a bit deep into the final corner, and I think it is costing him some time with that V-shaped line. He's just not quite able to get the car to park the way he wants it, and he does not improve as a result there with a 38.706. And to be fair, his previous lap of 38.17, he knows he's got a lot of time out there, but he's just got to find it once again. Meanwhile, the biggest surprise of them all right now, with Franz Washington and Samuel Cran not taking to the circuit in qualifying. I believe they've both got issues with their respective cars and not able to make it out onto the circuit. We do have Achitella, who improves to a 38.475, but as he makes his way into turn 1, that only puts him P15 overall, and the Hyundai have lost the driver. Yellow Flag Motorsport's definitely having a difficult day at Donington compared to his peers, and the lowest placed Alpha driver right now, or Pro driver you could liken them to, as he makes his way down the hill compared to his peers who have put in laps, and he is a long way off of the field. And another driver who is really struggling in this qualifying session right now, Matthew Shepka, currently P12 overall, and in class that translates into a P10 in class, and he'll definitely want to try and find some more time out there with only 2 minutes left as he makes his way up towards turn number 12, and will very shortly be riding on board with him to get a feel of what it's like to put in a lap in the Honda Civic around the Donington Park circuit. And as he heads to the timeline, we jump in the car here, bring on the dashboard as well, and he takes it away. So heading down towards turn number 1 as he improves there to 37.719, but now he'll have only one more lap to improve further. Coming into Redgate corner, into 3rd gear, down to 2nd in fact on corner apex. Feels as though he needs a greater punch out the corner and also a bit more rotation in the car. And as he makes his way down for the crane of curves through 2 and into 3 here, you'll notice not quite picking up as much speed compared to, say, the Elantra's alternative of the Audi RS3. As he comes into the old hairpin, hooks that up absolutely perfect. Takes a little bit of grass with him coming out to the old hairpin, but keeping 2 wheels within the tarmac, that's absolutely fine. And as he makes his way up towards McLean's here, pointing the car in towards the apex, gradually getting it very nicely hooked up on corner entry. A much smoother lap compared to some of his previous from what we guarantee, as he makes his way up into the right hander of Coppis here, takes the apex in 3rd gear, powers across it, bare hesitation on the throttle there, and he has cost himself a lot of time as he backs off in fact, and I think he may have just cut the curve a little bit too much, and as a result that lap has been invalidated. But as he returns to the pit lane there, we look to Mark Senegal on his debut today in the privateer Rothmans machine, making his way on down the hill in the Delta class, of course, in the Hyundai Elantra, currently the lowest placed of our drivers. We've put laps in P17 overall in our Deltas, 6th of our Deltas, with the only other driver behind him being Samuel Coran, of course, who has yet to put a lap on the board, not participating in this qualifying session. And as he makes his way in towards what is turn at number 7 very shortly, Senegal, I think, is trying to do everything he can here to improve a little bit further, but with 1.1 seconds between himself and the rest of the field, it may be a bit difficult. But meanwhile, as the checker flag comes out, they're immediately forced to come back into the pits, and it is Hendricks who takes overall pole position. So it's time for our drivers to make their way to the grid for the first of 3 races for today, and let's take you through how they line up for sprint heat number 1. Jason Landry in the end line up on pole position after everything's evaluated with track limits and Hendricks' final lap not being allowed. So Jason Landry taking that pole position, the privateer, on his debut with 36.371, half a tenth clear of Wojciech Spiridoric there, the Polishman, qualifying P2. It's the rise of the privateers on the front rows. I'm getting a bit of a synonymous synergy here with Matt Neal in 1999. I'm not joking when I say that. And then Mika Hendricks in P3, the first of our official teams drivers there for Hassholz Motorsport, starts P3 on the 2nd row with Logan McKenzie from Yellow Flag Motorsports alongside him. Then on the 3rd row we have Breakfast for Dinner's James Carr, joined by the American of Robert Abrams for Yellow Flag Motorsports, followed up on the 4th row by David Bow for Breakfast for Dinner, who has alongside him in P8 your Delta pole sitter of Breakfast for Dinner's Justin Rhodes. Breakfast for Dinner both putting in a fantastic performance for their 2 drivers, with John Lowes on there for Beaverbuzz Energy P9, joined on the 5th row by Jerome Bajula as his teammate in P10. Then in P11 we have Matt Shepka there for Talksteer Racing, joined by Jacob Wally at P12, the Delta driver, and they are followed on the 7th row by the combination of Eric Statson and Gus Blondell, the 2 Deltas qualifying together, and then they'll be followed up by Kurt Smith from Not Last Motorsports and Connor Achitella, who start on the 8th row. On the 9th row, we'll have Mark Senegal and Francois Schink, and on the final row, alone by himself in P19, it is going to be none other than Samuel Cram, but he's not taken to the grid, and we await the lights. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 here today. Jason Landry looks to get a good start in the run down towards turn number 1, and so he does by the looks of things. But look at Swierdowicz here trying to go around the outside in the Audi as he tries to carry a bit more momentum into the corner, but in the end has to play it smart and safe as they all come through turn 1 and down towards the old hairpin they charge. But as they make the way through, Logan McKenzie up the inside there, James Carr getting the place early as they head on down the hill and in towards the braking zone for turn number 4. All the drivers coming on through and a little bit further back. The Drone Pagello is going overly deep, but managing to collect the car in the Craner curves as he now comes to the hairpin, but stepping out slightly as all the drivers there take a little bit of grass on cold tyres. But of course it's natural run a little bit wide initially into the old hairpin on lap number 1, but they'll calm down on the next lap. But meanwhile at the front, Swierdowicz trying to go around the outside at the McLean's corner as they make the way on through it side by side with Landry on the inside. Hendricks trying to get in tight in the middle. They break into Coppitt's corner. Landry defends hard, but look at Hendricks behind us. Swierdowicz carries all the momentum around the outside. They drag race their way up towards the S's, and this is where the Audi will have an advantage. There's a little bit more punch in the gears, and as they make the way down towards the S's, where it looks like Landry they're just able to have a bit more confidence in the throttle, and Swierdowicz backs out as he settles back into order. But as they make the way through the chicane, we can see them right now nose to tail. And I think Swierdowicz is going to look for another move very shortly as they head on down to the braking zone. Landry leaves the door open now, I think confident with the space that's available, but Swierdowicz goes as deep as he can on the brakes, and as they make the way through, the Audi driver gets a nose ahead. Meanwhile, further behind, Abrams, they're going a little bit deep, losing the place to David Bauer, and as they make the way into the braking zone for turn number 12, into Gollards they go. Landry on the inside here, Swierdowicz trying to go all the way around the outside. There's a drift there from Swierdowicz, and Landry retakes the lead, but after one lap, it has been very fierce, and there's plenty more to come. So on to lap 2 they go here, and it's Landry ahead of Hendricks, followed by Swierdowicz, then McKenzie, but McKenzie going around the outside of Swierdowicz, then the battle for P3. They make the way through, but McKenzie can't make it stick for the time being as they exit Red Gate and head down towards the old hairpin. McKenzie stays P4, Carr P5, David Bauer P6, who follows him in hot pursuit, followed by Robert Abrams P7, Justin Rhodes, your Delta leader in P8 currently, followed by John Lauzon behind in P9, and then we have Jerome Pajulas P10. At best of the rest right now, Jacob Wally, who's been battling hard with Shepka and also Pajulas for that P11 position at the moment, and trying to move a bit further up the order. But as they make the way out to the old hairpin, we've got a bit of grass and dust being kicked up there, and further up the field we've got Hendricks battling side by side with McKenzie as they make the way into turn number 7, and Hendricks there defending and holding off McKenzie, who really wants to get back into that P3 as they make the way with the right hander. But meanwhile off circuit, that's Achitella who's gone very wide and disappears into the ether briefly. The yellow flag motorsports driver getting it wrong at McLean's, and it's not a positive start to his day of racing here at Donington Park. Meanwhile, Kurt Smith, after a reasonable start getting 1 place, has fallen a bit off of Eric Statzer, and now has Gus Blondell behind him, the Hussol's Motorsport driver, putting pressure on the Not Last Motorsports driver as they make the way into the S's. But as they come on through, we have to look from them back up to David Bauer here as we have 3 wide almost. It's 2 by 2 in the end. David Bauer on the inside of McKenzie. This contacts McKenzie's turn, albeit he's reset as they make the way on through, and how they all survive that I'm not exactly sure, but they've made it on through, and as they come charging up towards Gollard's corner here, Bauer trying to cover James Carr as they make their way into the braking zone. But as he comes on through here, you can see just how Carr makes his way out the inside of Abrams, and Hendricks now trying to get back into the mix as well as they come down towards turn number 1 for the 3rd time of asking. And in the charge we ride on board with John Lauzon, the Viva Buzz Energy driver, as he breaks his way into Red Gate corner. We bring the bell box up in the bottom right as well, so you keep track of a who's who. And as he comes on through, clearing Logan McKenzie, now at 1 position but battling side by side with McKenzie as they make the way on down, but McKenzie backs out as you saw that on the left hand side mirror, and as they come down there, a brief mistake from Robert Abrams as they make the way into the old hairpin. Abrams goes deep on that inside line. Lauzon's going to look for the run round the outside here as it gives Hendricks a bit of breathing room, and Lauzon's going to carry all the momentum up their hill in towards McLean's. They go on towards the brakes, and as they do, Lauzon on the inside, and as he comes through the right hand here, I think he'll get it done. But in return, what will McKenzie have to say to his teammate Abrams as they make the way on through? Well, I think he says, go on Abrams, you can go for it. And as they make the way into Coppitt's corner, it's the 2 yellow flag motorsports drivers who are stepping on one another's toes as they try to battle their way past the Viva Buzz Energy Veloster. But in the charge, they make their way down towards the S's once again, in towards the braking zone. And sure enough, Lauzon having to defend hard here as they make the way on through. Beautiful camera shot here as they all snake their way through the chicane. Shepka there to defend versus Rhodes and Statzer. And in fact, Justin Rhodes battling with Statzer for position and holding off for the time being as they come on through and down towards the braking zone for turn number 11. In fact, Justin Rhodes one moment was in P8. I think there's been an off for Justin Rhodes and he's just had to try and hold Statzer at bay as they make the way out of Melbourne and up towards Gollards, which means that Jacob Wally is now leading in the Delta class once again with 5 minutes complete by the time they get to the end of this lap, but still 10 more minutes to go plus the final lap. There is plenty of racing time available as we've got a car parked up there on the inside of turn number 12. That's Mark Senegal, the privateer. I think that's a broken car because it's not going anywhere, but he is officially a lap down now. But meanwhile, as we look back up towards the front of the field, we can see the top two are breaking away. Landry and Spiridoric are absolutely battling two for now, and it's David Bauer who's looking to really be the best of the rest in P3 right now for breakfast for dinner, and that's not slight against him, but that's just the way the top two have broken away as both breakfast for dinner drivers, they get it wrong with the old hairpin. And James Gold goes very deep and onto the grass. Meanwhile, Hendricks around the outside there and go all the way around to David Bauer. And the Hassel's Motorsport driver gets up into P3 once again. And we've definitely seen all four corners of the top four so far as he makes his way up towards turn number 8 right now. I think he'll be glad to try and break away from the breakfast for dinner pair as he heads on down towards the S's. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Logan McKenzie still chasing after what is John Lauzon as they make their way through the right-hander and in towards the S's. They head on down towards the braking zone. You can see a little bit further behind Jerome Bajula is also trying to get into the mix here for Beaver Buzz. He wants to try and support his teammate and gain some extra points in the teams in his personal championship as they make their way through the S's, but he can't find a way through this time around. He's going to be a bit patient about it here, but I think that patience will pay off very soon as they make their way down to the braking zone for turn number 11. Onto the anchors they go, and as they come through the right-hander, no change at this time, but they make the way up towards turn number 12 in towards the braking zone. They make their way on towards another lap very soon, and right now things are settling, but I think it's more the calm before the storm as meanwhile your race leaders, and here they are, they have broken away from the rest of the pack by 4 seconds almost. Jason Landry leads ahead of Wojciech Spiridoric as they make the way in towards another lap, but the thing about these two, I think it's only going to take a spark to ignite the battling between them, and when they battle they may cost one another a lot of time, like what we saw at the very start of this race when we saw Hendricks really try and make it a three-way fight for the lead, but in the end losing out. But by comparison, we look to the leader of the Delta class here. And in fact, Jacob Walley, I believe, has had an off-track moments ago back on lap number 4, and that off-track coming towards the end of the lap. And Justin Rhodes is now back in the lead of the Delta class here. It's to-ing and throwing in terms of who wants the lead and who can keep it on track. And Eric Statzer, well, if he can't be leading the class behind his championship rival, then the best thing he can do is be P2 behind his rival, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. But Kurt Smith there in P3, having inherited a couple of positions through very smart driving and just keeping it on the black stuff as he makes his way into Coppice Bend. He'll know now he has a lot of pressure coming up from behind him in the form there of Jacob Whaley, the privateer, and the Not Lost Motorsports driver Kurt Smith will have to defend if he wants to hold on to that podium, because I think Whaley will feel as though he's got a bit more pace under the hood of his Elantra. But then again, this Veloster, of course, small, short and sweet on its gearbox, and as he makes his way through the S's, you can see they're carrying the speed, but meanwhile Whaley can a little bit more speed by comparison as they make the way down towards Melbourne. Onto the brakes they go. Whaley thinks about it, but he can't go for it there. He tries to get Smith instead to go a little bit deep, but Smith parks it very nicely on the apex and brings the car on around. And as they make the way up towards turn number 12, meanwhile further up the field we do have the battle between Lauzon, McKenzie and Abrams really now starting to come to bear as McKenzie gets the run out the final corner. Lauzon defends the inside, but literally being absolutely sandwiched between the two Yellow Flag Motorsports car. And as they make their way in towards turn number 1 here, well, I think Lauzon's got to ask himself the question, is he between a rock or a hard place? Because right now he's got the rock behind him, or that Robert Abrams will be looking to boulder his way on through, and in the hard place in front is Logan McKenzie, who's going to make it as hard as possible for Lauzon to get back past him. But as they make their way into the old hairpin here, Lauzon absolutely digging in and trying to keep Abrams at bay as Abrams looks down the outside to get the inside into McLean's. They head up the hill. And as they make the way in towards turn number 7, he goes round the outside onto the inside on the brakes. Can Abrams get it stopped in time? He can. Lauzon sees him coming, gives him the space. And look at Jerome Bajulaz right now, who's also trying to get in here. And I think Lauzon needs a bit of reinforcement, because Bajulaz right now, he's been watching this and now he can finally get in. But what he does first and foremost is takes the position off his teammate. And as they make the way down the back straight here, well, I think Bajulaz might be trying to say over the radio to his teammate, get in my toe and follow me through. And as they make the way into the S's here, Bajulaz looks up the inside of Abrams. Can he find it into the S's? No, he can't. He has to back off. There's only one way through, and it's in the form of Abrams, who takes the lead position as they make the way down towards turn number 11 for the 6th time of asking under race conditions here in race 1. And as they head onto the anchors, we can see behind now everybody now queuing up with all the battling that's occurred with Justin Rhodes in P10 overall, the leader of the Delta class, and then we have Matt Shepka just behind, also trying to get into the mix here as they make their way into the braking zone for turn number 12. But coming on through a bit further back, Jacob Wally trying to go around the outside here of Kurt Smith for P3 in the Deltas, and Smith really making sure that Wally is going to have to work for it if he wants the position off of him. But meanwhile, we have to cut away from these two because we have had a change of leader, and it is Swierdorich who has taken the lead of the race off of Jason Landry. We just missed it on camera, but it happened into Redgate Corner. But we still have 5 minutes plus the final lap to go, and I wonder if Landry right now might just be teeing up a return move right at the end of the race. But Swierdorich cannot make the breakaway. He'll need to get to about 0.8 of a second away and then hold on to that gap as a minimum if he wants to feel safe at all, because of course these touring car racing class cars do pick up quite a toll on the straights, and that tow really kicking in from half a second and closing. But meanwhile, we look from them back to the battle for P3 in the Delta class, P13 overall between Wally and Smith. Smith still holding on there as Wally literally throwing every trick in the book in the run to McLean's, decoying one way, decoying another way, but can't quite find it. Takes a peek into Coppice Corner, still can't find it, and I think right now a little bit of frustration may be brewing perhaps if he can't find a way through on the next lap or two, for the simple reason that Smith here seems absolutely unfazed by the presence of the 827 behind as they make the way in towards the S's here. And ahead of them is of course Eric Statzer, who whilst having fallen off the back of the road, still holding on to a comfortable P2 in the class, P12 overall. And I think Wally really wants to go hunting after Statzer to try and make it a P2 and get some huge points in this opening race of the day. But still, he's got to pass one driver before he can go hunting down Statzer, and that driver is Kurt Smith. But as they make the way out of Melbourne and up towards Goddard's once again, falling back for now, but he still will have another 3 laps approximately, depending on how quickly our leaders get on around. And speaking of our leaders, we look back to them here as the Polishman of Swierdorich leads the way onto lap number 8, heading on down through the crane of curves. And as he makes his way down the hill this time, the number 80 driver looking very comfortable. As meanwhile, I believe we have just had a quick swap of position between Wally and Achetella. Now, what exactly has happened here? I think it may have been a slight connectivity issue, because Achetella is still firmly behind by quite a distance as they make the way down towards the old hairpin. But as they come roaring on down, we look back up to James Carr very shortly. But before we do, we continue to focus here on Smith, who's just had a nice run for the old hairpin, and Wally falling back there. But now we do cut over to James Carr, and we can see him running in P4 now by himself in terms of the road in front of him, but he's still got company behind him in the form of his teammate of David Bauer, and these two making their way through at Coppice Bend and now down towards the S's and in the charge. I think the two breakfast and dinner drivers here are going to focus on running together, because whilst they're not going to be contesting the podium, P4, P5 in this race will be a huge bundle of points for the team as a whole, and that will give them a nice amount of clearage with regards to the rest of the teams who may not be scoring as well here today, such as Yellow Flag Motorsports, who right now their drivers are succinctly behind in P6, P7 and P15. But as they come on through, we look to Wally here, who's looking for the run on Smith in the run down towards Melbourne. He's got the inside coming out of the S's here. Smith's going to try and go around the outside. 2 minutes still to go. Can Wally get it hooked up? I think he can, as they make the way out to the hairpin and up towards Goddard's. And Jacob Wally finally gets the move done. It has taken him 5 laps to find a way past Kurt Smith, but in the end, just a better run out to the S's has got it done for him. Now he's going to try and hunt down Eric Statz, who's 1.2 seconds clear, as they make the way to the timeline once again. 2 laps to go here with the time remaining. Can Wally get onto the back of Statz and look for the move? Well, Eric Statz right now, I think, will look in his rearview mirror and notice that the colour of the car immediately behind him has changed. It has gone from being the purple green to what is now the darker colours, or the darker combination of black, grey and yellow of Wally. And as they make the way down towards the old hairpin this time, well, I think Statz will just keep to his guns, which is keep it calm, keep it consistent and keep it cool in the Civic as he makes his way up towards McLean's once more. Meanwhile, looking from them to a little bit further up the field, in particular looking to Robert Abrams. He's got the pressure of Jerome Bajulaz right behind him as they make the way up towards Coppice Bend. And it's interesting to see how John Lauzon has fallen back off of these two over the last 3 laps. I think Lauzon has just pushed it a bit too hard, and there might also be a little bit of damage on the aero of the car. But I think it may just be where he's battled so hard early on and taken a lot of life out of the car and the tyres. And now Bajulaz has almost been tagged in, if you will, to say, right, I can't do it. Can you find a way on past Abrams? And Abrams right now will be wary of Bajulas behind. Of course, these two no strangers to one another, as Alzon gets a poor run there out of the S's and has a slowdown, I think, and as he makes his way back up to speed, releases P9 overall to Justin Rhodes, your Delta leader, as they make the way into Melbourne. But as they come through the hairpin and up towards Gollards, we look from them to drivers who already made the way out to Gollards and on to the final lap. White flag out there, and we can see it. Swiridovich who leads by half a second over Jason Landry as they make the way into turn number 1 for the final time in Sprint Heat 1. They come through the right-hander, and well, I think Landry here is close, but he's not close enough to really mount a challenge unless Swiridovich makes an error. He's going to have to make a small error for it to happen, but still, the one thing we know about these two, when they're at the very top of their game, they don't make mistakes, and as they make the way through the old hairpin, both drivers are absolutely hooked up, knowing just how much they can push, how much speed they can carry through the corner of the old hairpin. Under Starkeys they go, up towards McLean's as they head into the braking zone. Landry is close, he's taken 1.5 attempts out of Swiridovich in the run to turn number 7, but now it's about the run to Coppice and who can get on the power first and foremost and carry the speed into the S's as they both make the way under trail, breaking through the right-hander and heading on down here. And can Landry find a way to get closer to the beast of Germany that is the Audi engines? They make the way down towards the S's. I don't think so, as the gap stabilises at 3.5 tenths, and that's the Audi's pace just matching, if not surpassing, the Elantra. But heading through the S's here, 2 more corners to go as they head in towards the braking zone for Melbourne. They come on down onto the race, and Swiridovich won't need to do anything fancy here because Landry will not be able to lunge it from that far back. And as they make the way through 11, 1 more corner to go. The gap continues to hold at half a second as they head towards the final corner. There's 1 corner between himself and victory, and all he needs to do is play it smart and sensible. And as he comes through the final corner, no mistakes made. He makes his way on out, and he will be your winner. It's the privateer of Wojciech Swiridovich who takes the win overall and in the Alpha class in race number 1, ahead of the privateer debutant of Jason Landry P2, Mick Hendricks P3, and it will be James Carr P4 ahead of David Bauer P5. The breakfast dinner drivers in formation. Ahead of the formation of Yellow Flag Motorsports is Logan McKenzie P6, Robert Abrams P7, Jerome Bajulaz P8, Justin Rhodes P9, crossing line as your Delta winner. P9 overall, John Lauzon P10, Matt Shepka P11, Eric Statzer and Jacob Wally complete the Delta podium. P2, P3 in class respectively, P12 and P13 overall as they make the way on through. Kurt Smith P14, Conor Achitella P15, and Auguste Blondel will be your final finisher P16 as we now get ready to set the grid for race number 2. But as they get ready to go, of course, it is going to be our breakfast for dinner driver on pole here as our drivers now start making their way to the grid. There's no breather whatsoever, of course, between the first race and the second race. All our drivers are expected to head back out onto the grid immediately, and well, as they line up, we can't take you through the grid, of course, due to limitations of the iRacing replay file, but we will see that grid gradually formed. Of course, Jason Landry will be starting in P3 with the top 4 inversion, but the mix-up at the front will be that we will have the breakfast for dinner machine as piloted by James Carr on pole, and it'll be Mika Hendricks alongside him, Jason Landry on the second row just ahead of what will be their Wojciech Swiridovich. But the rest of the field line up as they finished, and we'll very shortly we'll be getting the lights, and it's time for race number 2. And it's lights out and away we go once again here in Sprint Heat 2. Another 15 minutes of racing and battling as James Carr holds on to lead in the run down towards turn number 1. But interestingly here, Hendricks immediately cut into the inside to Redgate. I think Hendricks is worried here about Landry trying to get the jump on him as they make the way on through. And out of the corner, Landry and also Carr go wide. Blondel has a very slow run and spin at turn number 1. But as they make the way down the hill, we look to the blimp camera here and you can see Landry right now falling backwards further and further with that mistake at the opening corner. And as they all come on through with the distant camera shot, all in sequence, serpentine in their way on through. But we come back to the closer cameras here, and James Carver run wide at the old hairpin. Now into defend versus Hendricks. They make the way up towards McLean into the braking zone. They go. Hendricks is going to go all the way around the outside on cold tyres. This is brave. It's the battle of the Elantras. And right now, James Carr knows he can put the foot down a little bit more on the inside. Door rubbing there as they come through turn number 8 through Coppice and down the back straight. And Swiridovich here with Landry falling behind them and continuing to fall backwards. Now as a run for the top 2 as they make the way down towards the S's. But in towards the braking zone they come, and as they come on through here, the formation all line astern as they try to calm it down for a brief moment. As our drivers charge on through, absolutely beautiful to see all all 16 drivers in that formation. A bit further back, Gus Blondell trying to catch on up, but meanwhile, Jacob Wally here battling hard with Eric Statzer, who's trying to go round the outside of here for P2 in the Delta class, but Statzer holds that inside line. It's about for P12 overall as well, and as they make the way up towards Gollard's corner, well, Wally's been able to hold that outside line, still side by side into the braking zone, and well, Statzer really showing awareness of Wally in return. Wally's showing a lot of respect in kind as they make the way out to the final corner, but Jacob Wally gets it done. So after one lap, as they make the way in towards Redgate corner once again, it's Carr ahead of Hendricks, followed by Swiradich, and then David Bauer. Then we have McKinsey, P5 a little bit further back, followed by Landry, Abrams, Bajulas, and then behind Bajulas we do have Rhodes, your Delta leader, who's battling with Lauzon as they make the way in towards the old hairpin, and best the rest is Shepka in P11 behind as he tries to chase after John Lauzon. The battle to be inside the top 10, but as they make the way on down and through the old hairpin for the second time of asking in this race, you can see now Overdrive's trying to push it a little bit harder, but in return find themselves running a little bit wide, as we see a message there from Arku Dadis in the Twitch chat. I pretty butchered that name and I do apologise, saying nice indeed. Fantastic racing from Overdrive in race 1, and they're continuing the tempo here in race number 2 as they make the way up towards Coppice once again. In fact, we ride on board with Shepka here as he makes his way through the corner, and the Honda just not quite having the legs at the moment, it would seem, in these smaller, shorter sprint races, but you imagine in the sprint feature it'll try to come alive by comparison with Shepka at the wheel. And as he makes his way down towards the S's, you can see currently 4 tenths on the back of Lauzon, but only 4 tenths clear of Wally, who will want to try and find his way past the 2 Alpha drives to go after Justin Rhodes if he can. But as they make the way in towards Melbourne very shortly, Shepka right now close, but not close enough to consider a move up the inside as he goes onto the anchors and makes his way through the right hand. A full steering lock there being applied, or as much as you would as a driver under race conditions. You don't apply absolutely full steering lock because otherwise you'll crook the wheels. But as he makes his way in towards Gollard's onto the brakes here very gingerly before he goes full steering lock into the apex, and you just see there how sensitive the front of the car is as they make the way through turn 12 and on to the next lap. But as we look from them to our race leader, meanwhile James Carr right now under pressure from Hendricks as they come through Redgate once again, goes a bit wide, and that's going to be a mistake that's going to give Hendricks all the run he needs. Now can Hendricks get it done before they enter Craner? Yes he can, as they make the way down the hill, and James Carr there, he went a little bit deep on the opening lap but wasn't punished for it, and now he's been punished as he's made the same mistake twice as they make the way out to the old hairpin. And Swiradich is going to look at this right now and think that he can pile on the pressure as they make the way up towards McLean's, charging on through here in the breakfast for dinner driver of car right now. I think will be wondering whether he needs to focus more behind him or more in front of him, as Swiradich looks on, and David Bauer behind also tries to get into the mix as they head on through. We have Jason Landry looking up the inside, meanwhile Logan McKenzie, and as he makes his way through the right hander, the Canadian gets the move done. And remember, Jason Landry with a great start in the end ran wide in the run through turn number 1 and cost himself very dearly, but he's finally inched his way back into the top 5. His next target, David Bauer, who's 1 second clear. As they come through the S's and down towards Melbourne they go. Of course, for Landry at this point, it's all about playing the tempo and expecting the top 4 to battle a little bit harder as the race goes on. Also, he's still got Logan McKenzie behind him, and whilst he has passed Logan McKenzie, he's not going to see McKenzie just evaporate off into the distance. The Yellow Flag Motorsports driver really does come alive the deeper we go into these sprint event rounds, whereby we normally see in the first race, McKenzie normally takes it quite calm, and as we go into sprint heat 2 and then the sprint feature, McKenzie's pace comes alive more and more, and it's the same in the features. He may be a bit of a slow starter, but by the time we've got about 15 to 20 minutes into the feature races, the alpha rounds if you will, McKenzie is right up there with the very best of them as they make the way into Redgate. Meanwhile behind Abrams, pulling a little bit off his teammate, still P7 however, and everybody really setting their personal best at this time. It does seem as though the track is getting faster and faster as we go deeper and deeper into the day at Donington, and as they come on down through the counter curves once again, Abrams right now starting to inch a little bit backwards towards Bajulas as they make the way into the old hairpin, and Justin Rhodes close behind as well. I think Abrams will be wanting to try and improve his lap times by just a tenth or two to make sure he stays clear of the number 99 car, because Bajulas of course would love to take the position off of Abrams after taking so many laps behind him in race number 1. He'll want to try and find a way through sooner rather than later in this second race. And of course for Bajulas right now, The one only reason he may not want to make the move is because he is P8 and therefore he would take reverse grid pole due to the top 8 inversion of the grid for the sprint feature. But then again, P7 still in the front row. You've still got an opportunity to get the lead in the run to turn number 1. So P7 and P8 would be the ideal position if you do want to put your bets on essentially taking reverse grid pole or the lead at come the start of the third race of the day. But meanwhile, we see Eric Statzer here having recently been passed by Connor Achetella, who's moved up into P12 as Shepka gets it rolling down the S's and just catches the car in time. The Talksteer racing driver having a difficult moment, just going a bit too deep in the car, bouncing around on the rear end as he brings it back to go down to P14 with Kurt Smith behind him. We have had one retirement of Gus Blondell with an early retirement in this race, retiring on lap number 2 due to damage to the car, which he picked up on the opening lap, and that damage has only got worse, we believe, as time has worn on. But meanwhile, whilst we saw a mistake there for Shepka, one thing we've also seen change is Swierdowicz has got ahead of James Carr towards the end of this lap, albeit it's happened off camera, and as they make the way through Redgate, now Swierdowicz will have a run at Hendricks, albeit the gap is 1.4 seconds, and Hendricks is absolutely pushing it right now. Previous lap was the fastest lap being set in the race by Hendricks at 36.43. Meanwhile, Swierdowicz by comparison 3/10 slower, but you do have to respect as well that he did have to make the pass on James Carr, and therefore that's not going to be a true indicator of his fastest lap. On this lap, we'll get to see whether Swierdowicz responds in kind. But meanwhile, speaking of responses here, responding to his opening mistake, Jason Landry now chasing after David Bauer, and we ride on board. Making a good run there out of McLean's corner, looking up the inside into Coppice, going heavy on the brakes here, but gets squeezed to the apex, and Bauer there not holding anything back as they make the way in the drag race down towards the S's. He's still on the left hand side, however, and as they make the way down towards the corner, who's going to back out? Will Landry or Bauer do so? And it's Landry who backs out there, lets Bauer retake the race in line, otherwise it'll cost one another time. And I can see what Landry's thinking here. He's thinking about James Carr in front as well. He doesn't want the other breakfast for dinner driver to be given all the mileage to run away. So Landry right now has got to be tactical with regards to where he makes the pass and when he puts the pressure on. Had a near run at it at Coppice, but then Bauer held it round the outside, and now as they make the way up towards turn number 12 into the second half of this race with only 7 minutes to go plus the final lap, Landry trying to pick his way for P4 and get himself further up the order, but as he comes out to Gollards here, not the perfect run, and both drivers stay as they were. Logan McKenzie half a second behind, and McKenzie you would imagine also wants to try and get into the mix here as they make the way into Redgate once more. Onto the brakes they go, and as they do, Landry gets the better turn in there. You can see Bauer by comparison going a bit deep, but Landry then made to wait as Bauer brings the car back to bear, and as they head down through the crane of curves up towards the old hairpin. No change at the moment, 2.5 tenths separates them into turn number 4 onto the brakes, and can Landry find a way of repeating what he was able to achieve on the previous lap, which was the run through McLean's and up towards Coppice. They go under the Starkeys Bridge, he looks one way, looks the other, looking to cut back to the outside here. Meanwhile, Bauer covers him off on the inside run into McLean's, onto the brakes they go. Meanwhile, James Carr has fallen much closer to the pair of them after a poor run coming out of the old hairpin, and as they stay nose to tail in the run up towards Coppice Bend. Well, now this is going to compromise Bauer to a degree for the simple reason he'll lose a bit of run. He'll gain the toe, of course, in the run down the straights, but I wonder if he'll lose a little bit of the front end turning that he wants on his Lancia with his teammate right in front of him, producing a huge amount of dirty air. That is a slow down by looks into James Carr as he takes it in the run to the S's. So Landry will gain one place, gets a good run out of the S's, and now can he find a way to go around the outside? Well, you can see there how Bauer cutting onto the inside immediately. He thinks that Jason Landry's a threat. We look from the exterior cameras here, and as Landry tries to go all the way round, well, he can't quite get the cut back there with Bauer parking it on the inside, and Bauer covers him off very nicely as they run up towards Gollards. In towards the braking zone they go for the final corner, and as they make the way through, it doesn't look like Landry's going to get the cut back. He wants a tap to the rear end there of David Bauer's car, but taps and that these touring cars can take them, and as they make the way across the timeline here to go on to what for them is lap number 7 with just shy of 5 minutes remaining. Jason Landry being thwarted here, and the top two are being given all the time in the world to start to break away, with the top two now 3 seconds up the road as a minimum as the battle for P3 rages on here. Meanwhile, a bit further back by comparison, we can see here James Carr, after that mistake, only moments to go, falling back behind Logan McKenzie as well. So McKenzie has picked up P5 as a result, and James Carr now will look to come on back gradually in the pursuit, as also Robert Abrams under pressure here from Jerome Pajulas in the battle for P7. And as they make the way up towards McLean's, Pajulas is going to go outside to inside through 6 onto the anchors into 7. But Abrams outbrakes him there, but he's still got his nose in. It's going to be very close, and as they make the way in towards Coppice, Bauer once again under pressure from Landry, who this time time goes all the way around the outside. Now can Landry do what Bauer did to him? Only laps to go in terms of keeping himself there on the inside and now break his rival. It's going to be a drag race here, but I think Landry will have it as they head onto the brakes. Bauer's going to make it too wide through the chicane. Neither one of them wants to give in, but one of them has to, and Bauer has to give it in the end. But look at Logan McKenzie with no problems in terms of carrying speed for the S's. He's got the run into the corner, and Bauer goes deep. He misses his braking point as they come through the right-hander. McKenzie moves up into P4, and David Bauer loses 2 places through one sequence of corners. But he's going to try and have the run back into Gollard's. McKenzie comes off the inside, and as he breaks his way on there, I think McKenzie needs to think about parking on the apex. He does so for a simple reason. I think Bauer right now has got a huge amount of pace to take with him as Robert Abrams is into the pit lane. I believe that is for a drive-through penalty, and in fact he has had to be towed once in the pit lane there, so I think there's some damage to the car as well. And McKenzie defends the inside here as one yellow flag motorsport driver falls, another rises and tries to hold on, and as they make the way through the crane of curves, Bauer and Carr, we should say, both battling hard in the pursuit of P4, and the yellow flag motorsport driver here, Logan McKenzie, doing nothing but digging in as hard as possible and entrenching himself in P4. And whilst that's not going to be reverse grid pole for the top 8 inversion, it's still going to be critical points and putting right up in there in the mix for the sprint feature as they make the way into McLean's. And you can imagine that right now James Carr's going to be at the back of this trio and thinking, can I politely come through? And he'll be saying that to David, his teammate of course, for the simple reason they swapped places earlier on. I think now James Carr would love to have a crack at this situation, but I think David Bauer in return here really wants to have a go as well as they make the way out to Coppice, and as they make the way on down towards the S's. Well, Bauer absolutely tucked in behind the yellow flag motorsports. Landry trying to take every little sip of slipstream as they make the way through the S. Is so close there, almost able to reach out and touch the rear wing of McKenzie's car. And as they head into the braking zone, we ride on board the rear of the yellow flag motorsports machine as they head into the apex of Melbourne. And you can see how they're now going a little bit deep, opening the door slightly for Carr, but Carr not abusing it, not opening it up any further for the simple reason he does not want to fight with his teammate. The two teammates want to work together and pick up P4, P5 respectively as they make the way out to Gollards and onto the penultimate lap in sprint heat 2. They come across the line then, 2 more to go. Landry sets a personal best of 36.713. Meanwhile, your leaders are Hendricks and Spiro Dorridge. They're not really close on one another. The gap has come down from 2.7 seconds over the last 3 laps to 2.5 seconds, but otherwise it is very stable. So right now it really is the big battle of who is going to be finishing in P4. The top 3 does seem to be done and dusted in terms of squirming for position, but meanwhile they make the way into the old hairpin. Jerome Bergula side by side here with what is Justin Rhodes. I'm not sure there was contact there, but Justin Rhodes has survived the old hairpin, but Jerome Bergula has meanwhile taken to the gravel, and with that John Lauzon under pressure a little bit further back from Jacob Wally, as Wally here I think can now see that the lead of the Delta class is there for the taking if he can pass the Buzz Energy driver. But then again, Lauzon doesn't have to give up the position, and nor will he want to, for the simple reason he loses 1 place. It's going to be points to this championship that are going by the wayside, and Lauzon trying to keep the privateer of Wally behind him all the way through Coppice and down towards the S's. But as they make the way on down in towards turns 9 and 10 very shortly, well, Wally will have 1 more lap after this. I think he has to try and tease a mistake from Lauzon, because Lauzon absolutely resolute as they make the way through the chicane and up towards 11, on towards the braking zone. And meanwhile Justin Rhodes holding on very nicely here in P7 overall and in the Delta class lead. This is going to be an absolute plethora of points coming his way if he can bring this on home as he makes his way out of the hairpin and in towards the final hairpin on this lap. But 1 more lap to go, and speaking of 1 more lap to go, here is your race leader. He started the final lap, the white flag out, Mika Hendricks for Hasholz Motorsports in a comfortable lead. With 2.8 seconds, he's reopened that lead, and he looks absolutely untouchable right now as he makes his way on down towards the old hairpin. Meanwhile, Wojciech Spirodowicz by comparison there, but just not quite able to find the lap time that the Elantra has at its disposal, with Jason Landry P3 and all sustaining the hunt as they all make the way on through. Further back, however, we do have Connor Achatella battling side by side with Jerome Bergulas, who after returning to the circuit after that off, and we're not sure if it was just a mistake or contact with Justin Rhodes at this point on the previous previous lap. But either way, Bajula's right now finally back into the top 10, passing Connor Achitella, and Achitella trying to find a way back through for that P10 overall position as they make the way through Starkey's and up towards McLean's. But it looks like it's going the way of Bajula's as they make the way into the braking zone here, and I don't think Achitella's close enough to try and venture the move currently as they head up towards what is Coppice Bend. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, looking from one Beaver Buzz energy driver to another. Lauzon still under pressure from Wally, and Wally really now puts in all the pressure into the S's here and trying to get Lauzon to go on the inside and defend. It will cost him a lot of speed, but if Wally can carry the speed through the apexes here, he'll have all the run he needs towards Melbourne. But Lauzon gets hooked up nicely, and Wally not close enough there, even by sitting a bit further back. But we have to go up to the front of the field, ladies and gentlemen, for as he makes his way out the final corner, he's going to take the win in Sprint Heat 2. It is Mika Hendricks who crosses the line, your winner for Hassholz Motorsports in the 473, your overall and Alpha winner by 3 seconds over Wojciech Swierdowicz, the Privateer P2, and Jason Landry completing your podium in the Alpha and overall categories ahead of Logan McKenzie P4, held off David Bout and James Carr to the line, and it will be Justin Rhodes who comes on home, back-to-back Delta wins as he crossed line P7, John Lauzon P8, he will take reverse grid pole there for Beaver Buzz Energy, Jacob Wally P9, Jerome Bajaz P10, Connor Achitella P11, with what will be Eric Statz for P12, Kurt Smith P13, and then Mark Senegal will be the final driver to come on through to cross the line on the league lap P14, with the retirements of Shepka, Abrams, Blondell, Curran and Schink. But congratulations to all of our drivers for an absolutely superb race. And well, now we do have a brief breather, ladies and gentlemen, before we get ready to go racing at one last time today, as our drivers are given a 5-minute breather, and that provides us with an ideal opportunity to be able to take you through the results of the 2 races that have just transpired and give you a quick recap of what we can expect to come in the sprint feature, or the 3rd race of the day. So we start off by giving you a recap of the results from what was race number 1, Sprint Heat 1, and these should appear on screen very shortly. And we can see in race number 1, it was a winner for Wojciech Swierdowicz there, the Polishman, the Privateer, taking home the win by 4/10 of a second over Jason Landry in a hard-fought battle between the 2 of them. Mika Hendricks P3 for Hassholz Motorsports, and then James Carr P4 and David Bow P5 completing the top 5, the breakfast for dinner pair, ahead of the Yellow Flag Motorsports pair of Logan McKenzie and Robert Abrams, with Jerome Bajulez completing the top 8. Justin Rhodes P9 there, your Delta winner in race number 1, and Beaver Buzz Energy's John Lauzon completing the top 10, with Matt Shepka best of rest P11 ahead of Eric Statzer, Jacob Wally, Kurt Smith, Connor Achitella, Auguste Blondell, Mark Senegal, Francois Schink, and then last but not least, not taking to the circuit much like Schink, Samuel Curran. And a special mention, of course, to Justin Rhodes, Eric Statzer and Jacob Wally, because they made up the Delta podium for Sprint Heat number 1. And as we come on to the results for what was our 2nd race of the day, Sprint Heat number 2, we can see here the win being taken, as we just bring those results back up to the top, the win being taken by Mika Hendricks by almost 3 seconds for Hassholz Motorsports over Wojciech Swierdowicz. They're the Privateer, close at first, but not able to stay with his rival all the way to the end of the race. But I think he'll still not be too perturbed by that, for the simple reason, a great result in race number 1 with the win, and now a P2 in race number 2. Great points on the board, and he sets himself up nicely for the sprint feature. And Jason Landry there completing the overall and the Alpha podium in P3. Another great result for the Privateer on his debut in the series. Logan McKenzie for Yellow Flag Motorsports holding off the charge of the Breakfast for Dinner army to take home P4 there. And then it was the trio from Breakfast for Dinner of David Bout and James Carr, P5, P6, followed up by a teammate Justin Rhodes, P7. And Justin Rhodes, of course, not just P7 overall, but also your Delta class winner ahead of John Lauzon P8, who will be our reverse grid pole sitter for the purposes of our sprint feature for Beaver Buzz Energy. And I think that's why he might have been flashing his lights right at the end there with a little bit of happiness in terms of the fact he will be on pole, and he's nailed it in Sprint Heat 2. And there'll be Jacob Wally P9. That's where he'll start on the grid, of course, for the top 8 inversion. While he starts P9 on the grid for the sprint feature, the Privateer ahead of Jerome Bajulez P10, and then Connor Achitella completing the run into the best of the rest with P11. And then he is followed by Eric Statzer, Kurt Smith, Mark Senegal, Matt Shepka, Robert Abrams, Auguste Blondell, Francois Schink, and last but not least, not able to make it to the circuit again, much like Francois Schink, unfortunately, was Samuel Cram. A special mention as well to the pair of Jacob Wally and Eric Statzer, with the pair of them finishing P2 and P3 respectively in the Delta class. And that means that your Delta class podium for the sprint heat number 2 race consists of Justin Rhodes on the top step, Jacob Wally on the second step, and then Eric Statzer on the third step. But those are the results for sprint heat number 2. And now we do wait to go racing, of course, for what is our final race of the day, ladies and gentlemen. It is only 1.5 minutes away. It is the sprint feature, 30 minutes in length, double the time duration of the 2 sprint heats. And it's almost as if we're just putting the 2 of them together and going racing at one more time. Well, that's what it may feel like for some of our drivers, of course, with being double the duration. Therefore, it is a test of stamina and also more towards tyre management, where there being no pit stops expected, of course. And if you do need to come into the pits, well, that is going to consume a lot of time, and our drivers will need to take it down a notch in terms of how aggressive they are over the opening 15 minutes, perhaps, and instead save that aggression for later on in the race. But then again, saying it is one thing, but when you go racing and the lights are out, anything can happen. And as we see our drivers here in the warm-up, we only have a minute to go. A limited number of drivers out on circuit right now. Quite understandable, given the fact I think most of them were using it as a cool-down period, just to reset, get themselves mentally prepared for the sprint feature. But rest assured, when we do go racing one more time, it's going to be fast, it's going to be aggressive, and it's going to be what we love from touring car racing. No holds barred racing action here at Donington Park. And as we do wait to go racing at one more time, we do say hello to some additional individuals in the respective chats, in particular in the YouTube chat to Matthew Shepka, and also there to, I believe, assuming one, or in other words, I believe that is the master of the Elantra today, Mika Hendricks himself there, who's saying, I've turned to the dark side. Well, you may have turned to the dark side, but you're definitely very powerful on the dark side, it must be said, assuming one. But as we see our drivers now getting ready to go racing once again, who will be at the very top of the podium come the checker flag? Let's find out. So as our drivers get ready to line up on the grid, of course, we will not be able to walk you directly through the grid due to technical limitations for the iRacing replay file. But what we can definitely tell you is that this man right here, John Nelson from Beaver Buzz Energy, is your pole sitter. And he will be joined on that front row, I do believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, by Justin Rhodes, who will line up alongside him. And can Justin Rhodes, as a Delta, potentially bring home an overall win? Now, that would be history in the making. There's no question about it. And then behind them, we will have the Breakfast for Dinner army continue with James Carr and also David Bauer. There'll be Logan McKenzie, Mika Hendricks, and then it will not Mika Hendricks, my apologies, there. It'll be Jason Lange, Wojciech Swierdowicz, and then Jason. Well, then Mika Hendricks, we should say, as we stumble over our names there and our timing towel not being too accurate as well, which adds to the confusion, of course. And then we'll have the rest of the field line up as they finish for the purposes of the second sprint heat race. But as we do count down the clock here, 1 minute to go until we get the light to go racing. Not too many more drivers and needing to take to the grid. We are just waiting. And in fact, it's lights out and away we go as John Lauzon gets us underway for 30 minutes of racing action. And as he heads on down towards turn number 1 onto the brakes, he'll go very shortly. But can he keep Justin Rhodes at bay? Or more importantly for Justin Rhodes, does he give way to his teammate James Carr on the inside? And I think the answer may be yes, as they both make the way on through. And the two teammates slot together once again. But as they come roaring on down towards the old hairpin for the first time under these race conditions, we can see Logan McKenzie fighting on as he tries to pick his way past Justin Rhodes and does start the inside. Meanwhile, David Bauer, by comparison, having to defend a bit more than go on the offensive here, with the fact he has Wojciech Swierdowicz right behind him as they make the way through Starkeys and out towards McLean's. In towards the right hand they go, and Bauer defends on the inside here, but Swierdowicz trying to go all the way around the houses, much like we saw between him and, of course, Hendricks and Landry in the first two races today, but can't quite make it count, or can he? As Bauer there loses the nose into Coppice, as we see Swierdowicz getting his nose ahead, but now it's all about who can get on the power and avoid the understeer, and it's Bauer who gets the better run as they make the way down with Justin Rhodes. They're going a bit wide. He's going to be staying on the inside in the run to the S's and having to back it off. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Swierdowicz there takes the grass briefly. James Carr battling hard with Logan McKenzie. McKenzie trying to cut his way on through. He can't quite find it as James Carr then puts it in deep as they make the way in towards Melbourne. They come onto the brakes, and behind Will Hendricks looking up the inside there. David Bauer up with Swierdowicz making that error in the run down towards the S's where he touched the grass for a brief moment, and in return now bringing himself back up to speed. But he's got Jason Landry for company behind, and how on earth Hendricks has picked his way all the way through up to P4. Meanwhile, his main rivals are Swierdowicz and Landry have made very little ground by comparison. Well, it beats me, but that goes to show you how quickly Hendricks is pushing on as they make the way onto lap number 2. Further back we can see that Atchitella battling with Eric Statz here as they make the way into the opening corner. Red gate, Atchitella on the inside here trying to pick his way past the Delta driver as the Alpha goes up the inside, and the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver gets into the overall top 10 once again. But it's not all done and dusted up front as we cut around here to Logan McKenzie, who has found his way to hold off James Carr in the run to the old hairpin. But these two continuously exchanging places, and as they make the way up towards what is McLean's, I think James Carr with a little bit of a run wide there will finally settle in behind as they make the way into the right hander of turn at number 7. But coming on through, this has given Lauzon all the breathing room he needs as we ride on board the gearbox here of Logan McKenzie as he comes charging up towards Coppice Bend. And to keep you in the frame of mind as he almost takes the rear of the camera off the back of the car there, does Carr as they make the way through Coppice Bend. And that shows you how much Carr is pushing right now as Hendricks gets a good run as a result of Carr going slightly deep. McKenzie brings it back onto the racing line. 9 that Carr's going to be battling with Hendricks. Hendricks given the lift off there by Carr to go on through. Carr doesn't want to waste any time in chasing after McKenzie. He'll use Hendricks to help him out if he needs to as they make the way on down. But meanwhile, Swierdowicz here having to defend versus Jason Landry, also chasing after Bauer at the same time. Hot on the brakes into Melbourne. Bauer gives him the space there as Swierdowicz goes in tight. And as they make the way up towards Goddard's Bend, you can see how Swierdowicz right now, every corner, he has to be of two minds at the same time, which he has to be attacking but defending, as there he goes wide. Well, in fact, he goes wide. We were going to say no. He goes round then. I think there may have been a bit of contact with Jason Landry, although we're not 100% sure there where it was just a lock up on the rear of the car, and the car went round, and where it was contact between the two of them. But the point standing that now Jason Landry trying to go round the outside of Swierdowicz into Redgate corner. Landry on the outside here. It's going to be a difficult one, and you can see Rhodes behind the Delta leader, who has been pushed backwards towards Wally and also Atchitella as they make the way on down. And right now Rhodes needs to get a move on because Jacob Wally for the first time today could see the leader of the Delta class, and goodness me does Wally want to take a piece out of him. I can tell you that right now, albeit on circuit, as they make the way up towards turn at number 7. He wants those points, and as they make the way up towards McLean's, well, he's going to have to fall back a little bit for the time being, but I think if Wally gets an opportunity, he'll be going for gold. There's no question about it as they make the way through turn 7 and up towards 8. But meanwhile, as they come up towards Coppice Bend, drivers who've just cleared it, well, here's your leader, John Lauzon, and Lauzon has fallen back into the clutches of McKenzie, who as they make the way down the back straight, McKenzie's going to be made to go around the outside, and Lauzon's going to make this as hard as humanly possible and go late on the brakes as well. Of course, the Velocity has a slight strength in the brakes compared to the Elantra by comparison, and as they make the way out of the chicane and now down towards Melbourne, you can see behind McKenzie, Hendricks and Carr almost three wide there. Hendricks in the middle of the two, trying to part the seas like Moses. Can he do it? Well, he clears one side of the barrel wave, but he doesn't clear the other side. He's still side by side with McKenzie as they make the way up towards Goddard's. But the key thing for him is he's on the inside, and I think he will get the 2 for 1 done as they make the way through the second hairpin. Meanwhile, James Carr tucks in and tries to find the run on McKenzie in return. They head towards turn number 1, and as they do now, Carr on the outside, McKenzie on the inside, Hendricks being released to go racing. And as they head into the braking zone here, they all settle differences and settle down once more. But meanwhile, let's not count out that this man has just set the fastest lap of the race of 37.66. It is Swierdowicz who right now is chasing after David Bauer and looking to find his way on through. But I think the challenge for him will be that if he does not find his way through soon, he'll be made to battle once again with Jason Landry. With the amount of time the pair take out of one another in terms of battling, that could be very costly. As meanwhile, speaking of battling up and down the field, we do have Mark Senegal close up to Kurt Smith. We focus here on Swierdowicz, who tries to go around the outside to inside on Kai, win a little bit deep and wide at the old hairpin, and Swierdowicz is going to get the move done. Landry has to back out there as Carr tries to squeeze the punishment, but the three of them come together, and well, I think the elbows have really started to come out now as they make the way on through. And James, well, in fact, David Bauer having a nightmare moment with regards to going off there after the contact side of Swierdowicz's car, and Jason Landry gets the 2 places for the price of 1 moment of contact. But I think there might be a question mark over that may go to the stewards after the race. But as they head in towards the S's right now, of course, all post-race stewarding, we look up to your leaders here as it's 4 wide in the run down towards Melbourne. Well, goodness me, I thought they're going to calm it down. If anything, they've gone the other way. But Hendricks in all of this, goes in up the inside of all of the drivers, and now finds its way into the lead ahead of James Codd, John Lawson and Logan McKenzie, and now they're 3 wide behind as they make the way to Gollard's corner, and James Codd, the inside of both Lawson and McKenzie, gets it done. I think there was a little bit more to it than met the eye there. I think there was a slow run out of the S's between what was Lawson and McKenzie, but in return it caused all 4 drivers to step on top of one another, and how on earth they've all survived that is testament to their driving abilities and their respect to one another on and off the circuit as they make the way down through the crane of curves. But Hendricks now is your leader of this race 7 minutes in, but what a way to make the move. A 4 wide run into Melbourne and being the guy who moves all the way up into the lead of the race as they make the way under Starkey's Bridge. But of course we've got a long way to go, and as they come roaring on through and up towards turn number 7, anything can happen, and we've got so much time remaining, and indeed with all this batting, has anybody taken too much out the tyres before it's late in the day in the race? As they make the way in to the right-hander of Coppice Bend, you would imagine that right now Swiradaric, having had the contact with both what was at the time David Bauer and also Jason Landry, might be looking to calm it down a little bit right now, as will Landry, to be fair, because they can afford a couple of bumps and scrapes, but not too many. They don't want to be taking chunks out of the car, and as they make the way into the S's here, John Lawson now under pressure from Jason Landry, who tries to look for the move as we ride on board with the Canadian driver. As they make their way down to the braking zone here for turn number 11. The privateer Landry looking for the move, and you can see that Lawson having to get back on the brakes there. I think not braking it enough to make the apex, now to snap the brakes back on, and Landry having to go a bit deep in response as a result of that. As they make the way up into Gollard's Bend, you see the difference in lines where Landry really pointed the car towards corner apex. Meanwhile, Lawson having to cut across under braking. You can see what Landry's doing. He's got confidence here that he can make the move, and as they make the way towards Redgate, Lawson covers him off for a brief while, but will Landry switch back to the inside? He looks to the inside line to Redgate, not close enough to go for it, as fastest lap now goes to Mika Hendricks at 36.86. Lawson goes a bit deep, but it's the run down through the crane of curves here. Lawson is going to be on the outside come the run to the old hairpin, but can he keep Jason Landry on an awkward line? No, Landry gets ahead, gets the door shut, and as they make the way into the old hairpin, Landry moves up into P4 ahead of John Lawson, who now has Wojciech Swiradaric for his company, as they make the way underneath the bridge and up towards McLean's once again. But as the Canadian of John Lawson looks to defend here, Swiradaric right now staying right there in the Audi, looking through the right hand and not for the move here. He'll be looking for the setup in the run down the back straight in towards the S's. As they come through Coppice, you can see behind Justin Rhodes also staying within arm's reach of this battle, and he still has Jacob Wally for company in the battle for the Delta lead, their P7, P8 respectively, but the battle for P5 overall here is the focus of our cameraman's attention as they make the way down towards the S. You can see there Swiradaric taking a little peek to the inside, but he can't quite find it as they come on through, and they'll make the way in towards Melbourne. I think for Swiradaric, he's just got to try and get a slightly better run out the corner. He's got all the speed in the world in that Audi, but the problem is if he can't get the perfect run, it's not going to be worth it as they make the way through Melbourne and up towards Gollard's here. Landry, to be fair, not too far up the road. McKenzie and Carr as well, very close up the road as well. So this battle for the top 5 positions right now could really open up once more once we see a couple more moves being made in exchanges. Swiradaric could get right in there. I think he might just be like a ball in a china shop in terms of going for the moves and trying to get it done, and that could bring the field right back together as they make the way in towards Redgate corner. Swiradaric up the inside, and there John Lawson not fighting it too hard, and I think respect to the fact that the Audi driver may be a little bit faster in the race at this time, but looking to stay within touching distance so that way he can close up later on in the race to the final 10 minutes when the gloves come off and the real battling starts to commence. And I say real battling as if we haven't seen a huge amount of battling so far. We have to mind my words, ladies and gentlemen. The English vocabulary restricted us there, and in a way besmirching the racing we've seen so far. But I think you understand what I mean in terms it'll be those final 10 minutes of the day what our drivers say, right, now it's do or die, and they'll absolutely go for it as we see the breakfast and dinner driver here, Justin Rhodes, chasing after John Lawson and looking to do everything he can to gain another overall position and even more points to overturn the upset at the Hungaroring with Jacob Wally behind him here. It does look as though the 827 driver not afraid to continue to just sit behind Rhodes and at the same time match him for pace and use him as a pace car here. And of course the thing for Rhodes is he'll have to do the work of passing Lawson, and could, if the two of them battle, could that bring Wally right into the mix and see him pick up the paces as they lose out by comparison? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. As meanwhile, Connor Achitella, who we briefly saw run a bit wide and take to the grass in the X of the S is the last time out, still in P9 ahead of Matt Shepka P10. But we look back to the battle here between Eric Statzer and Kurt Smith for the final spot on the Delta podium, with Kurt Smith battling on the outside there into Melbourne and trying to find the move. He couldn't quite find it and has to wait up into Goddard's here. Meanwhile, a little bit further up the road, we have just had confirmation that John Lauzon has had to defend versus Justin Rhodes, who's trying to find a way on through. But in fact, as we cut away here from the battle for P3 in the Delta class to the battle for P6 in the overall standings, John Lauzon falling more and more backwards through time and space on the circuit, as we see here Justin Rhodes staying close to him. Meanwhile, Kurt Smith has found his way up the inside of Eric Statzer. As we look back to them as they make the way in towards the crane occurs, and Kurt Smith there almost taking off the nose of Statzer in the run into crane. He wanted to get the door shut and just in time as well. Oh, goodness me, and I think there might have been a bit of contact there between Smith and Statzer, albeit we had the wrong camera angle to see if it was definitely contact, but Kurt Smith into the wall, and that'll be a car towed to the pits with a collapsed front suspension. There's no question about it, and Statzer there, well, I don't think he meant it, but there's a bit of contact there from Bauer behind him when they're running that close to one another. Literally a metre of braking is all it takes in terms of drivers coming together, and Statzer being given a tap on the rear end. Well, he's in P3 in class right now. I think there might be a little bit of a cloud hanging over what happened there, as meanwhile we look from the battle for P11 overall now. We will very shortly as Statzer here defends versus Bauer in the run to the S's. Bauer's going to look around the outside and Statzer's going to go defensive all the way through. Well, Bauer's going to be made to have to work for him. In the end, he does get it. And Statzer there cannot defend on the outside and have the run down towards Melbourne corner. And you can see Bauer coming back across there and holding the position. But meanwhile, we look back up to John Lauzon, who continues to fend off Justin Rhodes and Jacob Wally and wants them really, I think, to fight one another. But they refuse to at the moment. They're both steadfast and looking to fight with the Alpha driver as they make the way across the timeline and down towards turn number 1 once again. Now, we can confirm something we didn't talk about earlier on in this race. Unfortunately, we did have the retirement of Jerome Bajulas from the grid due to technical issues with the car. They haven't been able to get whatever's broken in the Beaver Buzz energy machine fixed in time for the grid, so that's why you'll see him listed as a retiree. And also we have the continued retirees of Francois Schink, Robert Abrams, Augusta Blondell and Samuel Curran, with Abrams having the retirement at the end of race number 2, and they've not been able to fix the car. Meanwhile, into the pits, well, for a drive-through penalty is Dave Van Eric Statzer, and this has brought Mark Senegal back into the mix here in battling for what is P3 in the Delta class, but gets it wrong there at Redgate, and the privateer, well, one moment close enough to contest the position, and now falling back a little bit more, but still pressing on, and the P4 is on the cards here in class today for the number 21 driver as he makes his way down towards turn number 4 in the Rothmans Mobile. But as he comes charging on through here, we look from him back up to the battle for P6. And you can see here John Lauzon really having to defend hard in the run into the S's here, and he is being made to absolutely work for this. And I think right now he may be saying, are you guys sure you're Delta class? But that's the way they've been categorised based on their pace and their status. And as we look to the Deltas battling for the lead, Jacob Wally up the inside into Melbourne and looks to get the move done here. But now will Rhodes have the comeback up towards Goddard? Well, the door has been left open, and Wally there respectfully leaving the space when he could have potentially tried to run Rhodes out of road. But as they make the way into Goddard's here, we can see Rhodes coming back up the inside, and Wally not quite able to get it done this time around, but he'll have plenty more opportunities given the fact they've still got 15 minutes to go. We've only just gone on to lap number 10, so that means, doing a bit of quick mathematics, we've got at least 10 more laps in the bank. And as we see Wally here getting a better run through turn number 1, Rhodes goes a bit deep, and this could be all he needs here as he tries to out-drag Rhodes in the run down towards the old hairpin. They go side by side down through the crane of curves, and they've got to give one another enough space. But as they make the way into the old hairpin, Wally gets ahead and seals the deal for the time being. And Justin Rhodes there, I think he felt as though he could have perhaps run it side by side all the way to the braking zone, but decided, given the time remained, to back off and look for a return move a bit later on. I think playing the long game here in the number 84 car is the breakfast for dinner driver as he comes on through the right-hander and McLean's. He's going to definitely stay within arm's reach, and speaking of staying within arm's reach, we look to Logan McKenzie, who has been caught up, and right now I think Espiridovich's arms are long enough, he could reach out and touch the rear wing of Logan McKenzie's car, and Landry just in front getting ahead of James Carr there, as James Carr, I believe, had a brief slowdown coming out of McLean's, and Landry moves up into P2. They've been made to go around the outside for it as they head on down towards Melbourne as they come into the braking zone. Well, these these four all coming together very fast and naturally, and I think with that we are going to see some rather bold attacks very shortly, as Landry right now has to try and break away and go hunting after Hendricks. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Matt Shepka, as we look to him now, the Talksteer Racing driver has just picked his way past Connor Achatella on the exit of the S's to move up to P9 overall. But as we look to them making the way up into Goddard's, John Lauzon continues to have to try and hold off Jacob Wally and Justin Rhodes a little bit further up the roads. In fact, Lauzon into the pit lane, and I believe that may be for a drive-through penalty. Now, was there a bit of contact as Lauzon defended versus Wally? We're not 100% sure, but what we are sure of is John Lauzon is going to drop down the order. It's going to cost him a sizable amount of time, and this is not the way he'll have wanted his race to go whatsoever. But meanwhile, as we look from one driver who's having a difficult day in the office to one driver who right now is having all the pleasantries come his way, it is Mika Hendricks here as they make their way up towards turn number 7, and the Hassholz Motorsports driver, having taken a brilliant result, of course, in race number 2 with the win, after taking the lead this race with a 4-wide move, now leading by a comfortable margin of 3.7 seconds, and it looks as though there is no end in sight for his run of pace right now, with the fact that his lap times are on average half a second faster than what anybody else is able to achieve at this point in the race. And behind, where you've got the battle for P2 that is intensifying. I think they're so focused on P2, and that's why Landry needs to try and break away in that P2 position and make it a battle for P3 that gradually disappears off in the distance. But as they make their way up towards Melbourne, again under pressure from James Carr, here's Landry as we focus briefly there on Logan McKenzie, and as they come into the braking zone, Carr looking for that run on the inside under braking, trying to get Landry go a little bit deeper to open up the door. I don't think Carr's got enough under his own pace right now to try and make the return move on Landry. I think he's having to rely on trying to get Landry to make an error, and as they make their way out of the final quarter, James Carr into the pits, and surely not for another drive-through. Well, a number of drive-throughs here today in this third race of the day, and that's going to set him a long way down the order, and that makes it go from what is a 4-way battle for P2 to what looks to be a growing 2-way battle for P3 in the form of McKinsey holding on to the position with Swiradoric behind him as they make the way up towards turn number 4. But in the charge, they make the way on down. We can see here the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver just keeping it clean and keeping it together as they head into the braking zone for the old hairpin. Meanwhile, behind, Connor Achatella continues to try and chase down Shepka as they make their way into the old hairpin, and we ride on board here in this battle for P7. As they come on through, you can see how Shepka able to go a little bit deeper into the corner under brake, drifted the car through. Meanwhile, Achatella a little bit more pointed, but carrying more speed as a result. And as they come on up the hill, a little bit of a tap to the rear there of Shepka saying hello, and I think trying to put him under more pressure as Shepka defends on the inside into McLean's. And Achatella again getting a good run, but this is where we'll see the equivalence of the acceleration patterns of both the Honda and the Hyundai Veloster really start to come together, albeit as we make our way up into 4th gear, we'll start to see the Veloster gain a little bit in the straight line speed stakes, but not enough, and Shepka holding on nicely as they make the way on down towards the S's. Onto the brakes they go, and as they make the way through the left-right sequence here, Shepka holding on for now, but it's not looking as though it's going to be an easy ride down towards Melbourne. Can Achatella look for the run on the inside? He goes onto the brakes, but he backs it off there. He can't quite find the move at the moment, but definitely all over the mirrors of the Civic Type R drivers. They make the way out to the corner and up towards Goddard's, and we can see Shepka defends on the inside here. Now he's got Achatella all in his mirrors, and as he makes his way back into the race line, that pressure is building. But meanwhile, up his inside there, James Carr comes out of nowhere, and I think James Carr at this point saying, well, I've had a drive through, guys, don't mind if I do, I'm going to come on through. And Shepka defends the inside here, and that was a surprise, but a welcome one to be sure for James Carr as they make the way into Redgate, and Shepka's going to defend hard here. He wants to try and hold on to P7 overall, but in return James Carr goes around the outside, and now as they head into the crane of curves, this is going to put Achatella right back on his rear as they make the way in towards the old hairpin, but Carr clearing the pair of them, and now it's Shepka versus Achatella once again as they roll on through, but both drivers going deep there and pushing it hard and fast as they head up towards McLean's. Meanwhile, speaking of hard battling, we've still got McKinsey being hounded by Swiradoric as they make the way through the right-hander Coppis. And as they head on to the back straight, you can see how Jason Landry has broken away quite sizably now Almost 2 seconds is the gap to P2, with McKinsey more focused on defending here and trying to hold on to the podium position. And you can completely understand, with there being more points up for grabs in the sprint feature compared to in the sprint heat, it's all to play for here for McKinsey. And with only 9 minutes to go, now you can really start to consider going defensive for P3 rather than see the Swear Dutch can cover through and take him up towards the battle for P2. But as they head up towards Gollard's corner, that means our top two are just slowly creeping off into the distance, albeit Landry is starting to take a 10th or 2 a lap out of race leader Mika Hendricks. You can see them there in the distant camera view, albeit a 10th or 2 is not quite going to cut it given the number of laps we do have remaining. Based on the time remaining, we've got approximately 7 more laps to go, including the one they've gone on to. But meanwhile, further back, that is Jacob Wally in P6, holding off his pursuer of Breakfast for Dinner's Justin Rhodes as they make their way into turn 1 once again. And Rhodes, after being passed by Wally, has not been able to find a counter-attack so far, albeit he's still got time to go. And this is where we now start to enter the tyre saving phase in terms of who has saved the tyre to go a bit deeper into this race and be able to use it more aggressively right at the end, and who has pushed it too hard and is now starting to fall off the cliff in terms of their lap times. We'll look at the lap times here of Wally going deep. That's not going to help him whatsoever. And on that last lap, losing 2 tenths to Justin Rhodes. I think Rhodes may have backed off for a brief moment, is now trying to put the pressure on Wally to hold on to the lead position, and Wally there with that mistake. He won't want to make that again, I can tell you, for the simple reason every time you go a bit deep at the old hairpin, it knocks your confidence as a driver, and you're only likely to do it again and go even deeper and wide on the next time round. Because at the end of the day, when you've got a load of medium speed sweepers such as those at Donington Park, the one thing they preside themselves on is taking the confidence of the driver into consideration. And when you start to lose the confidence in your ability to carry speed into the corner, that's when the circuit gets you, when you lose all the lap time. I think Wally recovering from the mistake he made, and as he holds Justin Rhodes at 3 tenths at the moment, they make the way into Melbourne. Meanwhile, further back, we look to the battle still for P8 overall and what is P6 in the Alpha class, with Shepka holding off Achatella behind. And the pair staying with James Carr, it should be said, as they head up towards turn number 12, with Hendricks just setting the fastest lap of his race in terms of a 36.696, but it is at the fastest lap of everybody so far. We believe that's not the case, as we have had a fast lap from Wojciech Swirodowicz, the driver in P4, with a 36.66, albeit only a small amount faster, but I think that will be the fastest lap we see here under race conditions today, as we see our drivers making their way through Redgate corner. But as they come charging on for it, does look as though Achatella falling a little bit back that time around through Redgate, and in fact James Carr being caught gradually by Shepka as they make the way in towards the old hairpin this time around. And I wonder, with that drive through and the fact he pushed his way through Shepka and Achatella quite rapidly, where James Carr has cooked the tyres a little bit too soon, and those front tyres right now may be suffering from additional tyre degradation as they make the way up towards turn number 7. Meanwhile, drivers who've already cleared turn 7 have made the way out to turn number 8. Here's the battle for P3, and we ride on board with Wojciech Swirodowicz as he makes his way in the Audi Sport Customer Racing car into the S's and tries to find a way to upset the balance on P3 driver Logan McKinsey. As they come charging out of the S's and in towards Melbourne, he's just not able to find a way to usurp the potency of the Elantra on the exit of the S's. He's able to stay as close as he needs to should there be a single mistake from McKinsey, but that's the thing with McKinsey, he's been absolutely infallible so far. And as they head up into Gollard's corner here, onto the brakes they go, no change as Swirodowicz gets close under braking, but still just close enough to stay right there in the toe and get the power out of the corner. But the Elantra, of course, strong in the run up to 5th gear. Meanwhile, the Audi good in the run to 5th gear, a little bit stronger in the run up to 6th gear, but we haven't got long enough straights for it to be able to capitalise on its ultimate straight line speed advantage. As they come out of Redgate and down towards the greater curves and in towards the old hairpin, and this will be potentially where Swirodowicz can start to think about putting that pressure on and getting McKinsey to make an error as he comes on down through 3, and onto the brakes they go here for the right-hander, and again getting close, but can he carry enough speed here? Well, no, because McKinsey carries a bit more speed and hooks it up absolutely perfectly as they head up towards turn number 7. Meanwhile, into the pits, and another surprise in the mix. David Bauer comes on in for what we believe is a pit stop. Now, what has happened for the Breakfast for Dinner driver, we're not 100% sure, but what we can tell you is that he's going up on the jacks. In fact, I think he's going for a new set of tyres. Those tyres have had it where he's pushed them so hard, and now the only thing he can really go for is a recovery drive to gain a couple of positions, but more importantly, go for the fastest lap of the race. As meanwhile, we cut back to the battle for P5 here. Jacob Wally continued to hold off Justin Rhodes. And Justin Rhodes right now, the Delta breakfast for dinner driver, the lead breakfast for dinner driver on circuit, and how the fortunes have turned for the teammates as they make their way through the S's. And right now, Rhodes would love to pick his way past Wally, but I think Jacob Wally has got more than enough in the tank here to keep his rival at bay with 4 minutes remaining as they make their way into Melbourne here. And he just looks to not be making any mistakes whatsoever, minus that one we saw a couple of laps ago at the old hairpin where he went a little bit wide on corner exit, but otherwise the 827 driver right now is absolutely stapling it to the mast, and that's exactly what he needs to do. As meanwhile, fastest lap of the race has just gone to Jason Landry of 36.59, and Landry is gradually catching at Hendricks, but the gap staying just shy of 4 seconds. It is going to be a long rate of attrition to bring that one down in terms of the gap, and Landry has not got the time of day to be able to do it with the time he's got remaining, so he's going to, I think, have to rely on Hendricks making an error, which will cost him a lot of time as they make the way on around in the remainder. But as he heads up towards turn number 7, we look back to the battle for P3 here that is continuing to brew, and I wonder when it may boil over as they make the way through 7. And you see McKinsey there gets a poor run out of McLean's, and now Swiridovich will have the first run he's needed, but there's contact between the two of them, and McKinsey there really getting his elbows out with Swiridovich, open up the corner as much as he could to give himself the run, and Swiridovich I don't think will be too pleased with a knock on the car as they make the way up towards the S. And of course for them, they do have to worry about those potential contacts for the simple reason that every time they make a major contact that's treated as treated as more than a racing instant, it is a time score on the instant count for both drivers. And as they come down to the braking zone, now that we're so close to the end, who has got the instant points to play with in this race, and who is right on the threshold of potentially picking up a drive-through penalty and having to avoid any potential contacts, mistakes or anything in between as they make the way up towards Gollard's here. 2.5 minutes remaining, onto the brakes they go. McKinsey right now safe as Swiridovich comes on through behind him and goes over to the side. You can see here McKinsey literally bobbing and weaving on the straight, trying to cut all the toe for Swiridovich. He's doing everything in his power to prevent the privateer from getting close enough to consider moving to a red gate, and you can't blame him for it for the simple reason he's under pressure right now. And I think McKinsey may be worried that he hasn't got enough in the tyres to be able to keep him safe all the way to the end of the race, and now he's got to take every asset out of Swirodovich's arsenal, including racing line slipstream as they make the way out to the old hairpin and up towards McLean's. But is it going to be enough? Has McKinsey still got enough there, or will Swirodovich find a way on through as they come towards turn at number 7? Meanwhile, further back, etched continues for Yellow Flag Motorsports to try and make the late gain on Matthew Shepka as they make the way through the old hairpin. Both drivers go deep. Shepka goes very deep by comparison, takes the grass, and etched they're not able to capitalise as they make the way out towards McLean's, but mistakes still coming. And pressure still on for some drivers, including Shepka, as they make the way through McLean's and up towards Coppice. As they come on through the right-hander very shortly, you can see James Card just in front of them, not really breaking away at such a rate and knots as we perhaps expected. And I think James Card definitely now settling for what is P7 overall, P5 in the Alpha class as they make the way on down the back straight. We can see here etched the closest he's been for some time, but made to go on the outside there. Shepka covers him off in the run to the S's, and etched will have one more lap after this to potentially make the move count. I think he knows where Shepka is weak. It's the old hairpin and the run out of Coppice Bend, but can he convert that weakness into an opening as they come through Melbourne? Well, we'll find out soon. As meanwhile, race leader Mika Hendricks goes on to the final lap of today at Donington Park. It's Jason Landry who is setting the fastest laps right now. Hendricks moved the fastest lap time to a 36.48, the fastest we have seen all day for definite, I believe. And as he makes his way down the hill right now, Landry is closing. He's got the gap down to less than 3 seconds, just about, but it's not enough as he drifts his way through the old hairpin and just about catches the car. That could have been absolutely disastrous there if he'd not caught it in time. The car almost snapping loose on him. That shows you how hard he's pushing to chase the fastest lap and also to try and get the gap to Hendricks down. But meanwhile behind, Swiridovich here trying to find his way past McKinsey, and McKinsey again going defensive into Coppice Bend. Now will Swiridovich try to cut back? There's a little tap between the two of them here as they come through the right hander. They both survive it, but Swiridovich once again elbowed to the outside, and as they come down the back straight, can Swiridovich now find the run in towards the S's as we hear that etched has found his way past Shepka in the run to McLean's corner off camera in the battle for P8 overall as they make the way on through the S's. We can see here that McKenzie is clear. I don't think he's going to be at risk unless Swierdijk throws it all into Goddard's, because they come out of the penultimate corner. It's not enough. Meanwhile, speaking about done enough, he will have done enough to make it 2 wins out of 3 today. Here is your winner, ladies and gentlemen, for Hassel's Motorsports. It's none other than Mika Hendricks, who crosses the line, your overall and Alpha winner. 3 seconds clear of Jason Landry at the finish, with Hendricks responding by taking the fastest lap of the finish line. Logan McKenzie holds off Wojciech Swierdijk for P3 in the end, and then it will be Jacob Wally who comes out the final corner to make it P5 overall, which is huge in itself, but he takes the win as well in the Delta class, ahead of championship leader Justin Rhodes P6. It'll then be James Carr P7, ahead of Connor Achatella P8, who holds our Shepka to the line, and then shortly we'll have John Lauzon coming through to take the final spot in the overall top 10 as he comes on through for Beaver Buzz Energy. You also saw there Kurt Smith crossing the line, a lap down P13, and then we have a while to go until Eric Statzer will be coming on around, and you can see him here for what will be best the rest in P11, but for him, most critically, P3 in the Delta class. He makes his way through the Melbourne hairpin. One more corner to go for the Delta driver as he comes on through, and as he makes his way into left-hander here. Well, it's definitely been a strong day for Eric Statzer. Great set of results, and definitely keeping his championship hunt alive as he comes on out the final corner to take his checkered flag. And then in a brief moment we will have a Mark Senegal who comes across the line, a lap down on the leaders, I do believe. In fact, not a lap down the leaders, I'll correct myself immediately there. He'll finish on the lead lap, and the priority across the line P12, and for him P4 in class on his debut in the sprint feature. I'm very pleased with that as he parks the car up there in the gravel. But what a brilliant race from start to finish, ladies and gentlemen. And well, if we ever needed to know whether Mika Hendricks was able to recover from the disastrous day at the Hungary, there is the confirmation. The Hassel's Motorsport driver has come back extremely strong today, and I think with that it may just be enough to put him back in control of the championship standings, but we'll find out about that very shortly. And Logan McKenzie there, hearing from him directly in the YouTube chat, saying he was shaking the whole last lap, and you can understand why, because the pressure put on him by Wojciech Swierdijk was absolutely on the highest possible form. But in the end, the American holding off the privateer to the finish. As you can see there, Jacob Wally behind, I think very pleased with his performance today, and I think we do have him as a late charger into the Delta Championship, and Justin Rhodes will be more than aware of it now. But as they all make their way into the pit lane, let's bring up our final results of today then for our sprint feature. Well, as we can see here, after 30 minutes of racing in the final race at Donington Park Grand Prix circuit in Season 6 of the Alpha Touring Change, Round 6 to be precise, Mika Hendricks taking the win in the end by 3.3 seconds over Jason Landry and Logan McKenzie, rounding off the overall and the Alpha podium there ahead of Wojciech Swierdijk, who did everything he could to hunt down McKenzie, but in the end, only 3 tenths between the two of them, and he just did not quite have enough. Jacob Wally there with his first top 5 overall of the season, and also for him another win to add to his tally ahead of Justin Rhodes in the Delta class. Justin Rhodes P2 Delta, P6 overall, but still a strong performance from Justin Rhodes, and definitely a day where he's bounced back compared to what happened at the Hungary. James Carr P7 there for breakfast for dinner in a difficult day, racing inside the top 5 for so long, but then a drive-through penalty cost him very dearly, with Connor Achatella P8 finding his way into the race right at the end ahead of Matthew Shepka P9, but both Achatella and Shepka having difficult days at Donington, and then John Lauzon with the drive-through penalty being able to recover to P10. Best of the rest P11 there, and finishing P3 in the Delta class on the Delta podium, Eric Statzer ahead of Mark Senegal, and then Kurt Smith finishing a lap down ahead of David Bauer, who retired with 4 laps from the finish. Jerome Bajulaz not able to make it to the grid, neither did Robert Abrams, Gus Blondell, Francois Schenk, or our final driver on the standings list, Samuel Karam. But there we did have what were in the end a grand total of 14 starters, and in the conclusion it was 13 finishers with 12 on the lead lap. But fantastic racing between all of our drivers. Congratulations to them, and again a special mention to Jacob Wally, Justin Rhodes and Eric Statzer. They make up your Delta podium in the final racer today. Wally on the top step, Rhodes on the second step, and then Statzer on the third and final step. But of course now the big question you'll all be asking is, how does this translate into the championship standings? Well, fortunately for you, we could give you an update after 6 rounds of racing, and here is your updated standings. So we can see with 6 rounds complete, back on the top step now, confirmed by 13 points, is Micah Hendricks taking the lead over James Carber. Great run of results. But the two belligerents and rivals could not be closer with 13 points quickly swinging back and forth, and it's not over yet between them or indeed the hunt from other drivers as well, with Wojciech Swierdowicz there holding on to P3 on 307 points and only 30 points off of the top two. And you can imagine the privateer will be looking to charge into the top two if he cannot get as close as possible with the next round on the calendar coming soon. Logan McKenzie, meanwhile, P4 there, best of the rest, where there been a significant gap of 50 points between himself and Swierdowicz, albeit that gap is not unassailable, but you would imagine now that he'll be looking to consolidate that P4 before starting to make the charge for the top three once again, with Francois Schink only 13 points behind, albeit not able to make it to the grid today. Unfortunately for Schink, we were hoping to see him there, but I'm sure he'll be back in a week's time. And then Robert Abrams, P6 on 228 points with a strong start but a difficult midpoint and conclusion to his day, having that retirement in race number 2 and not able to make it to the grid for race number 3, ahead of Connor Achetella, and then David Bauer, Matthew Shepka and Jerome Bajulas complete your top 10, and you can see how close it is there in the run from P4 to P10, with the 7 drivers only being separated by a grand total of what is there, if we do a bit of quick mental mathematics, 67 points, and that swing can occur over 1 or 2 rounds. Meanwhile, outside the top 10, best the rest in P11 is your Delta Championship leader of Justin Rhodes on 180 points, inching closer to the overall top 10. And can Justin Rhodes break into that top 10 in the next round? That'll be a question we'll need to answer. And Eric Stats, so they're not quite able to get as many points as his championship class leader, but still holding on to P2, 141 points, but starting to fall back a little bit further now, 39 points off of Rhodes, and instead Kurt Smith is starting to look closer and closer by comparison, with the gap between the two of them standing at 18 points. Adrian Fedorowski holding on to P14, not in attendance today. James Logston P15 ahead of John Lauzon, who moves into P16 ahead of Auguste Blondel, Dom Savio, and then Jacob Wally moving all the way up into P19 with a great run of form, 73 points to his name. And then debutant today, Jason Landry there in the Alpha class, moving up into the top 20 already. He completes our top 20. Then outside the top 20, we have Kirk Lane P21 ahead of Charlie Purrier P22, and then Daniel Sedano, Mark Darnell and Mark Senegal complete the run to P25, with Mark Senegal on his debut, moving into the 25th position with 39 points, and a great day for the Rothmans privateer. Then Daniel Smith ahead of Joseph Oetzel, Sisman Bahudiuk, and then we have Aaron Hall and John Hinman completed the top 30. And outside the top 30, it's Alex Kotlowski, Tony Roma, Spencer Cockayne, Samuel Cran, Mark Crawford, Benjamin Harris, Michael Zepp, Ian Maddox, James Vance and Gurkan Demir. And then to complete our standings from P41 to 43, it is Ryan Windfeld, John Lynch and Stefan Chalafu. But fantastic racing from all of our drivers today, there's no question about it, and those championship standings for our drivers, whether it be overall in the Alphas or the Deltas, could not be closer. But now as we come to the team standings, we can see that breakfast for dinner, despite not having a huge success right at the front of the field, they still did have a great success overall today, and their advantage has slightly increased over Yellow Flag Motorsports, with 717 points to Yellow Flag Motorsports is 569 points. And interestingly, Yellow Flag Motorsports and Hassholes Motorsports staying close together still. The gap between the two teams just shy of 100 points. But the key thing is neither team breaking away or losing ground on the other. And Beaver Buzz also staying in the mix there in P4. But closer to Hassholes Motorsports at this time, with the gap between the two teams standing at a margin of 59 points. You would imagine if Beaver Buzz can continue this run of form, they may be able to creep a bit closer and back into the top 3 fight. Torque Steer Racing still within arm's reach of the top 4, holding on to P5 comfortably on 305 points. Head of QZ Motorsports is 110 points for P6, and then Not Last Motorsports holding on to P7 on 102, only 8 points off of QZ Motorsports and looking to jump into P6 in the next round. And then back of the pack racing, last but not least, on 23 points. But with our team's championship standings covered, that means, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's program and you want to know more about the Alpha Touring Challenge, the ATC, then why not check out our official website, that website being alphatouringchallenge.wordpress.com. Alternatively, if you want to go to the heart of the driver community, speak with the organisers, perhaps you're interested in getting yourself on the grid for a future season or later on in this season, or you just want to talk to some of the guys who are right up there in the field or in the mid-pack, you can of course head to our official Discord, the invite link available on screen, and speak to the community there. But as our community now gets ready to move on from the United Kingdom, they'll be making their way over to Austria, further onto the European continent for round number 7. With the racing action, of course, happening on what will be Monday, the 9th of January. We'll be bringing it to you as if it were live on Friday, the 13th of January 2023. Friday the 13th may be unlucky for some, but who can play their luck right and get it right at the Red Bull Ring Grand Prix circuit in our next Alpha round. We won't be taken to the National Shorter Circuit, of course, the site of major drama and battling action over the sprint races last season in Season 5, but instead we're going for the longer, slipstream-orientated Grand Prix circuit, its extended straightaways, and who can come out on top being smart with the draft. That'll be the question we answer in a week's time. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We have been the Alpha Touring Challenge. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, have a great weekend. Stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.